Hello, everybody. It is us.
Yo.
We are the Paper Dungeon, and this is Table Scraps, the show that we run on Thursdays to talk about the show that we run on Mondays, where we play Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. Um,
Aaron,
yeah.
Aaron, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen when we don't have a show on Mondays?
Uh, I assume that we just shut the whole channel down.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. Everything
We'll,
just goes.
we'll have something going on Mondays, but that is a great question, and that is something that we're going to have to discuss.
Oh man, I'm jumping ahead of script. I'm sorry. I
No,
apologize.
you're good. Well, Drew is asking this question because after this 3 year long campaign that we've been running, we're like 2 episodes away from the end.
Yeah, two or three,
Two or
I'd say.
three.
I was talking with Grant about this. I think we have three, assuming that we split the epilogue into its own episode, even if it's a shorter episode. I imagine we have 3 episodes left because how I imagine DJ's going to want to do it, right, is next episode. Spoilers, by the way, if you're not caught up.
This
Next
is the spoiler
episode,
channel. This is important.
um, next episode, I imagine, is going to be basically the build up to get into Clovar, basically, and then we're going to cut off right before we enter combat with Clovar, and then the following episode is just all going to be that final fight, right? The final big climax, and then gonna end it off after that, right? After that fight's done, and then final episode epilogue, and it's done. That's how what I foresee happening.
It's certainly either 2 or 3 because there's a chance that we just go pretty much
We,
straight to the fight with Clovar in this next episode.
right, that is also possible.
Um, it'll just depend, and then yeah, I do think that we'll have a kind of an epilogue finish up kind of episode afterwards. My settings got all messed up in Streamlabs because Streamlabs hates us.
Oh,
Well, at least it still okay. It is using the right mic stuff. We're good. Um, just the sound was a bit off, but yeah, we're almost there. We're almost to the end, and that I've thought a little bit about what we're going to do table scraps wise, and I think that I might just switch it depending on what we do on Mondays because I don't think that we're not just going to not stream for like however long it takes us to get up campaign 2.
hmm.
Now, what exactly we'll be streaming, I don't know, or how often we'll be streaming, I don't know. Um, but I assume that we'll run like one shots or maybe a little campaign. Heck, we might try out a different RPG. I might run a different RPG on Monday nights just
Who knows?
for a couple of months. Um, so depending on what we do, I'll either keep going with table scraps as usual, or I'll cut it down to like every other week or once a month or something like that. Um, or who knows? I might just put a temporary pause on table scraps. So that way, I can use this time to like make sure that stuff is working for campaign 2.
That's true.
Who
Yeah,
knows
we haven't really determined all that we are trying to
Yep.
accomplish
how
after the
much we need to
campaign
do?
finishes. So, yeah. That all those things, all those questions that need answering that we haven't asked yet to each other.
Yep, we've been very busy. Um, but uh, I mean, we're pretty far into it, so I'm just gonna just hit you with them. Plugs, social medias, any of the ones that you think of, we're probably there. Not very present, but we're there. We have Discord. You should be in that. It's a good place filled with good people that like things that you like, that include us and other TTRPGs. Man, wouldn't it be nice for us to just have a socials button that just automatically does all of them? That would be
Did
pretty
I
cool.
spell
Huh?
socials wrong or something?
No, we just have to input each one separately. Oh, and I think the exclamation point is a capital I. I'm not 100% sure on that one.
Okay, hold on. What is it here? Let's see if let's try this again.
I believe in you. Yay! There we go.
There we go.
iSocials. Nice.
Yeah, good old iSocial is
Yeah.
the next app to be released by
Apple.
Apple.
But yeah, so we have Discord. Check that out. If you want to support us, bring your friends. If you want to support us with money, check out our Patreon. Check out our Streamlabs donation. Check out our Ko-Fi. Those are great places to be. And give us money. We also have a website, www.thepaperjudge.com, that we have a merch store that you could buy merch from. It's pretty cool. I'm pretty sure that's everything that I normally talk about plug wise. So let's get to talking about the previous episode. It was I mentioned this to Grant. I don't know if it's our first one, but I think that it is our clearest one. We had not a single dice rolled in the entire session. 0 dice.
Oh my God, I did not realize that.
Mm-hmm. It's a weird thing, right?
That is a unique game of Dungeons and Dragons where you do not roll a single die.
No dice. Get them out of here. But yeah,
dice are overrated anyway.
I agree. It was very, very role play. There were no particular stakes other than character resolutions.
Lots of roleplay.
Yep, lots of role play. Special shout out to you and Grant. You two slammed it out there. I had a conversation with Grant that this episode for me was very much a return to form for me of like what I enjoy off of out of role playing a lot, and I'm a good transitioner. I'm good like glue to get from conversation to conversation, make sure that things are staying on the right track, and I really enjoy like setting up the ability for other players to just absolutely knock it out of the park.
Yeah. You do an excellent job.
Well, thank you. I try very hard, and knock it out of the park. You and Grant absolutely did.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
The both of you had some of my like favorite conversations that your characters have had in this campaign in this past episode.
Oh yeah, yeah. I definitely can agree with that. Like especially, it, like for me, like I feel like Grant did better like start than I did. I had to warm up to it a little bit.
Yeah, you definitely were a closer in a lot of situations.
Yeah, because like my first conversation with Vizen and Volna, that was kind of awkward. That was okay.
Yeah.
You know, but like, oh my goodness, like personally speaking, I absolutely loved the conversation that Cather and Edward had at the end of the episode. I thought that was just a total bomber.
Oh yeah.
But like especially but pretty much all the conversations that Grant had as Edward, like were great. Like he did.
Edward was Grant.
Felt real solid.
This was the most prepared Grant has ever been for any episode.
Yes.
And he himself has said that.
Well, he had like actual written notes for like all three of the big conversations that he wanted to have. I don't think that
Grant has ever taken notes or prepared for anything ever.
Maybe not.
Grant did his homework, and that's very exciting.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought, oh my gosh, I loved having track back. I loved like giving an opportunity to see some real track role play. Like that was a ton of fun. Getting back into swing of things and kind of gain a close on that. Like literally, like partway through the conversation that Edward and Tarak were having with each other, literally, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, man, I really wish that like there was time, and like arguably we totally could have, but like I kind of want there to be a conversation with Cather and Tarak now, just because like it, like what you two did like was very, very good, and I thought was a great kind of final closer on like Tarak and his story, you know, and his impact on the rest of the players and the characters in the game. And literally I'm sitting there thinking to myself like, man, like now there's like all these things that I want to say to Tarak, but I'm like, well, I don't really want to be repetitive because there's going to be a lot of the same things that I'm going to bring. I would bring up from the same conversation. Plus, it doesn't quite feel necessary. Like it feels like at least to me, it felt like it would have been a little bit too much, because most of it probably would have boiled down to like Cather apologizing to Tarak
Yeah.
which isn't necessary,
Oh yeah.
and just feels like Cather, both Cather and Track don't need that or want that at this point in the story,
Mm-hmm.
because
Um,
like
Catherine and
maybe
Tarak had a very similar vibe as to like why they didn't talk as like Edward and Abinthy didn't talk this episode. The reason was is because like they get it. Everything that has needed to been said between them, they kind of get. Like they
yeah,
already kind of know it.
right,
And I feel like Cather and Tarak were much in the same way, where it's like they were very similar people who like dealt with things in very different ways,
yeah,
and
100%,
because of that, they butted heads every once in a while. But like at this point in time in their story, they get it.
yeah,
Like
100, yeah.
Track knows that you probably beat yourself up quite a bit about it, and you know that Track would think that was stupid.
Right.
Um,
Well, yeah, that's like literally like I basically had that full conversation in my head. I'm like, you know, like Catherine might want to say something, but I'm like, but I already know exactly how what Track is gonna say,
mm-hmm.
and Catherine's gonna be like, you know what, you're right.
Yep.
And so that's why ultimately I just like mentioned how Catherine had just been sitting on the steps just listening the whole time. Like that was me just like kind of I mean, I was just totally selfishly inserting myself in your great moment. But like that was like ultimately like, it would be kind of nice if Cather was just nearby, at least listening to some of this, just
Yeah.
because
It
at
would
least
resolve a lot of his own issues.
yeah, it's because yeah, it would just be kind of something nice for him to hear. Just again, them kind of just looking back at, part way through the story, how things ended with Tarak and whatnot.
Yeah.
Especially just because like the whole episode was a lot of looking back,
Yeah,
and
of reminiscing and looking at where we've been.
right.
Speaking of that conversation with Edward, uh, I mean, first of all, I enjoyed it a lot. Track is such a fun character for me to play. Um, like if I were to start this campaign over again, I would obviously still choose Track, and
Mm-hmm.
there are some things that I would change about him. Mainly, I would have more NPCs for him,
Mm-hmm.
and I would also have him farther away from the amount of character growth that he needs.
Sure. Yeah, 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 yeah. I
Because
get
yeah,
that.
it really hit halfway through this campaign, and I was like, shoot, we did it!
Yep.
Like
We
crap, we
got there,
got there.
boys.
Oh god, and I've still got like 50 episodes left to do with this character who
Yeah,
isn't going to
yeah.
develop at all. Um, but I mean I love playing Tarak. He's just an absolute blast to play. And the nice part about him, I talked with Grant a little bit about this because he was like, "Did you have like stuff prepared for this?" And I was like, "No." And the reason it's so easy to do that with Tarak is that I wrote like extensive amounts of Orcish lore. So
Right.
like in their culture, I know how they would respond to this with their beliefs.
Right.
So like when someone's like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" I already know the answer. I don't have to like make something up on the
Ponder
fly
and
because I've
yeah.
already written about it.
Right.
So like Edward brought up names. That was a big thing for him.
Right.
And this is one of my favorite things. Also, hello Handscape. Uh, that I don't like stories about heroes that like they like beat the final boss and then it's just done.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we did it. We defeated the evil wizard, and now
We all go home.
I'm done as a person. Uh, and so it was really cool to be like, yeah, that's one of your names. And Edward would be like, excuse me?
What?
Um, and
What?
Track basically be like, yeah, you've officially reached 1/5 of who you are as a person.
Uh-huh.
You figured it out. You figured out 1/5 of it.
You have to go another 100 levels in
Mm-hmm.
order to
And
get
you
the
you
your
are at
other your
max
other.
level in Dungeons and Dragons, and you have only uncovered 1/5 of it, and it was a name that someone else found for you.
Right.
Um, and that's just a super cool thing because that it means that Edward still has places to go. He still has self-discovery to figure out.
Right. Still has a whole life ahead of him.
Yeah, he's not done growing. And I don't know when we'll see it. I don't even know if we'll actually see it. Mm-hmm. But I'm hoping that Grant comes up with a second name, at least.
Oh, yeah.
At some point in time. I don't know if it'll be like in the final battle, and like that's like the end of the final battle. He's like, I am Edward Lul Kolkadar, and I am Edward so and so, or whatever. Right. For all I know, it could be in the like resolution episode at the end where he like does something. But I hope that he comes up with something.
It
or
would be
asks
rad.
Me to help him with it.
Yeah, it would be rad, like in the final fight, if he came up with a second name. Like that would be, like I don't know, the flute singer or something. Yeah. I don't know.
The flautist.
Even though he doesn't play, even though Edward does not play the flute.
He does. He does it for his Shatter.
Oh no, I guess no. He does. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
he does,
He's a flautist.
Yes.
And a luthier. Except I'm pretty sure that's someone who repairs lutes.
I was gonna say I think it's still just a lutist.
Yeah.
It's a flutist and a lutist.
Yeah, it's so that was a very fun conversation to have with Edward. He knocked out of the park. He knew what he was doing, and I felt comfortable because it's Tarak, and I know how to respond to things as Tarak. Mm-hmm. So that was great. I'm gonna briefly touch on, because I only had two conversations.
Yes.
I talked with NPCs, aka Talanashta and Yorwick.
Mm-hmm.
Went swimmingly, very standard, nothing special happened.
Yeah.
Exactly as planned.
Fantastic.
And then I also had a conversation with Cather. Now, one of the things that Grant brought up that he really liked about this session, and I agree with him wholeheartedly, is one of the dangers of this type of session is it can turn into, I would like to talk to blank now, or I would like to talk to this NPC, and you just say out loud like where you go and what you're doing, and you do that like 8 times across 4 different people. And that's fine, but it can get kind of repetitive, a little bit stale.
Right.
But this episode felt very fluid, where it's like one conversation led into the next one, and it made a lot of sense as to why it happened and when it happened. So, I enjoyed you watching Edward from atop the cliff, Edward and his beloved, and you're just like, ugh. Yeah. And then after 10 minutes, you look over, and Apathy is just also right there next to you, like, this is disgusting.
It's just, when did you get here, Apathy?
And we had a nice little conversation, and the entire point of it was to demonstrate Abinthy character growth. Mm-hmm. Abinthy has hit his final stage for this campaign, which is like.
I thought it was very good.
Thank you.
Yeah, he's officially reached anti-hero status.
Yeah,
instead of anti-villain status.
Yeah, he's anti-villain. He's anti-hero. I would even go as far to say as. He might be aspiring to be a hero here.
Ooh boy.
Where it's like, he's like, I don't know if I really am a good person or not, but like, I can at least play the role of a hero, which is something that he didn't really think was possible for him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, in his conversation, he mentioned, like, a person is made up of the stories they tell and the stories told about them. And for Abinthy, he had been so focused on like 3 brutal stories that he like forgot the hundreds of other ones where he was the hero. And was just fully consumed by the 3 times that he ended up being the villain.
Right.
And so another part of this was to finally resolve it to the point that, assuming he's alive at the end of the session, we can reach the first time that I played Abinthy, which was he was a professor at a college.
Right. Much older,
doing
but
much older, yes. And so here's the thing, he can't die of old age, but he still can get older, I think. And if he can't, he's
well,
Abinthy.
I guess it depends on the definition of immortal that you end up using,
Mm.
because there's one instance where it's taken as you stop aging and therefore you cannot die of old age. Or there is the more literal and direct definition of you cannot die of old age. But meaning that you can continue to age, you just never die.
It is that you stop aging. You are immune to any effect that would age you, and you can't die from old age. Now, that being said, he probably has died from mortal
I
wounds sometime, and he might just set his clone at a different age
I was
periodically.
gonna say, like, I'm sure Abinthy has, like, by the time, so for context, for those of you who don't know, way back in the day, uh before TPD was a thing,
Yeah, you guys hadn't
Aaron
even moved out
played.
away from Nebraska yet.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we still lived in Nebraska at this point. And Aaron played Abinthy in like a mini campaign slash extended one shot. And in this particular one shot, he was like, this Abinthy was like an old man Abinthy who like was like had like this really long like
Oh
pencil
yeah,
beard goatee, like was super hunched over with like
imagine
walking stick and
very
like a huge backpack.
stereotypical like goofy wizard.
Yeah. And and so yeah, I fully imagine like in the future, Abinthy just has like several different cloned bodies of himself at different stages of life that he just uses as different disguises at
Yeah,
different points, you know?
he's like, which one am I going to be today? Um, he like gets fired from his job and then comes back as a completely just himself in a different age. He's like,
Yeah.
I'm here because I heard there was an opening, and they're like, hey, look, a new applicant. Um, but yeah, so that's what a lot of my conversation was.
That would be so funny.
I also enjoyed setting up potential one shots with these characters in the future.
Oh, uh-huh.
There was several moments where I did that, where I just like plant a seed of like, ooh, maybe something needs to
Maybe
happen.
we could do this, right?
Other thing that I enjoyed doing is asking Cather like, hey, what's your plan next?
Uh-huh. It caught me off guard, I'm not gonna lie.
Oh man, because I'm like, who knows if there will be a next, because we've talked on this show like
Yeah.
it would be pretty cool if you just straight up died.
Yeah. So, well, so the funny thing is, I didn't capture it. I didn't notice it right away. But during the stream, DJ messaged me as we're having that conversation. And he's like, "Hey, you don't know. Cather does not know. You and Cather do not know, like, what's gonna happen after the
Yeah.
battle." And which is great because
Oh
that's how I
man.
played it off anyway.
Yeah.
Because I genuinely don't know. Now that it's Cather, like again, like I'm hoping that I will have a chance to live out the rest of my days. But I don't know. And I will be okay either way.
I'm
I've accepted that.
I'm pretty pumped for it. Um,
I will
Aaron,
say if the gods of death try to pick me up very shortly after the fight with Clovar, I will try and make an argument and be like, hold on. There's one
wait.
more battlefield
No, no,
that
no,
needs
no,
to
no.
happen. There's one final frontier, and that's when he just grabs Abinthy by the arm and they go into the in
Dude,
between and
I'm
fight
just saying, if
fight the
they
Soul
show
Spear.
up to yoink Cather, and Apathy knows a single thing about it, it's gonna be like an episode of Judge Judy, bro. Like, Apathy's gonna be like,
Hold on here.
I've got some words. All right. I'm gonna go
Hands
full
will be
lawyer.
had.
I'm gonna whip out some litigation that they will not see coming. Um, so that's an exciting. But I really enjoyed it. I thought a lot about like, how am I going to start this conversation with Cather? What am I going to do? Where am I going to go? And I was like, how about I start with the most brutal thing I could possibly ask you, knowing out of game that you may not have an answer to it.
Yep. Well, although I did actually appreciate it in the end
Well, yeah.
because uh of the response being that like while he is okay with his end coming after they defeat Clavar, Cather would like to continue to live the rest of his life as he would like to,
Yeah.
which I think is a great like kind of full circle moment for him because that goes back all the way to previous conversations with Tarak, dude,
Mm-hmm.
which of where Tarak and Aaron so expertly using an analogy of a cage explained how in Tarak's eyes, Cather's a person in a cage who doesn't want to get out.
Yeah. Even though the door's
And
open. Yeah.
yeah. And so which is I mean, it's such an expert analogy. It's so accurate in so many ways. So the idea that Cather's like, okay, when this is all over, I do want to step out of this cage
And I'm
is
doing just fine. Because I want it all.
it would be like that would be like that is a genuine like full circle character moment,
Yeah.
which would be really cool to see.
And it also had another purpose other than being like, well, this could be tough. To do that of like, this will be good for Cather. It'll open up lines for you to like have things that you want to say in the future, and
Mm-hmm.
things for Abinthy to say to you, like if your gods show up and you're like, I need to go. Abinthy being like, excuse me,
Now
so
hold
you're a
on here.
liar? Like, so yeah, it was a very multifaceted uh, start to a conversation that serves a lot of purposes.
Just gonna yeah. It is a total apathy thing to do though, for him to be like, okay, so Cather, like what do you want to do when this is all over? It's like, I don't know. It's like, well, I would like to get to live out the rest of my life. He's like, okay, cool. Cut to moment. It's like, now hold on here. You're just gonna accept this? You're just not gonna it's like apathy. Like, what do you want me to do? Just like you want me to fight all three of the gods of death?
And he's like, no, I want us to fight all three of the gods of death. Oh,
Cue second one shot that Aaron
absolutely.
wants to have happen.
Well, so like the entire concept behind Abinthy's character. Have you ever seen the like? They aren't fully memes, but they kind of super are, which is the memes of like so and so versus the indomitable human spirit.
Oh yeah.
That's Abinthy in a nutshell. Where it's like the world will come crashing down. He's like, no, because I believe in the power of life.
Well, in other words, well, see, here's the
I
thing.
will
Here's the
not bow
thing.
down.
We are playing a fantasy D&D game, and I will say heavily inspired by traditional fantasy tropes. I would
Mm-hmm.
say, right? Because
Yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah. Meanwhile, Aaron is playing an anime character
Yes.
instead.
I'm in a different show. I got
Like
isekai.
like if this were to ever be like put into live action, like there would be like these like amazing live action actors for all the characters except for Apathy. Apathy would still be a 2D animated person.
There's a fantastic clip from it's one of the intros to a PAX game of Acquisitions Incorporated.
Okay.
And it's recapping what happened in the previous episode. And in the previous episode, they basically fought a Tarask in a giant mech suit. And the way that it's animated in the intro is they're like, but Acquisitions Incorporated had found the statue hidden in the depths of Waterdeep that they could animate and use to fight the Tarask. And it's like, I'll form the left leg. I'll be the right. I'll be the right arm. And then, gosh dang, one of the characters played by Patrick Rothfuss, fantastic author, he steps up and he's just fully animated in a different style and only speaks Japanese. And he's like, Kunjasai! Like, teleports into the robot. That's the vibe where it's like, with my sword, with my magic. And then Apathy's there and he's like, Omae wa mo. He's like teleporting behind people and stuff. Oh man, I love it. But yeah, like Abinthy. I mean, Abinthy yelled at a god for being willing to like, just like
Eh,
roll over and give up.
well, correction. Apathy yelled at the
The
god in this
god.
world.
Um, and like that's his entire principle, where it's like the whole point of mortality and the thing that separates mortals from immortals
Uh-huh.
is their refusal to give up on life.
Uh-huh.
Like immortals just don't have that drive because they cannot die.
Right.
And so like he's like, why are people who can't die determining anything about the lives of people who can?
Mm-hmm.
Like, get out of here. That's not your place. Also, mortals, why are you just rolling over and taking it? That doesn't make any sense. And so, like, if the gods showed up and they're like, Cather, we're here to bring you to your final resting place. And Cather's like, I suppose if it's the will of the gods, someone's getting drop kicked. Just a whole, like a torpedo of Abinthy is going to be launched at someone's chest. And I don't know if it'll be yours.
I was gonna
Personally,
say, yeah, that's the true mystery. Is does he just drop kick Cather?
I'm just saying, I'm taking out the god of grandmas first because there's no way.
Even though the god of
She's going out
grandmas,
first. God of
well, the god,
grandmas.
but see, the god of grandmas isn't one of the death gods.
No, but that's to show him I mean business. She's just gonna be there. Bam,
Just
drop kick.
the whole talk about. See, this is the true plot twist. The whole pantheon of the gods is going to descend and thank Fate's Gambit in person. Thank you for helping to
Mm-hmm.
save the world, the material plane, from Clovar and his forces. And it's going to be this huge, memorable like moment of honor for all of us. And then like and and then the three death gods are going to step forward and step to Cather, be like, "All right, Cather, it's time to go." Cather's going to be like, "All right, yeah." And he stands up, and then immediately Abithy just shows up with a shotgun.
Yeah, he's like,
Just,
I swear on you, you ain't making it out of this one, buddy. It's gonna be like a WWE promo. Like I'm just gonna be cutting a promo this whole time, and I'm like, The Rock will not stand for this. Like it's just gonna be Abinthy this whole time.
I think the funniest part is I don't even know if Cather would try to stop Abithy at this
At
point.
this point in time, does he even think that he can? Not like
Like,
physically. He could probably physically stop me, but even in death, does he
I
think that
mean,
Abinthy would
yeah, I
feel?
mean, no, I mean, yeah, Abithy's already promised, like, bro, like, you can't stop me. If I go to hell, I'm coming back.
Absolutely. Heck, it's probably worse if I go to hell, because then there's no one to stop me from just breaking out my fiance and just letting her do stuff. Like, it's just way better if you just leave him alone. Sometimes he yells, and every once in a while a god dies, but like those are replaceable. It's like the Simpson like old man yells at clouds. It's like, well, that's annoying, but like, should we really stop him?
Yeah, is it
Um,
really an issue?
could we
Is he
stop
really
him
doing
if we
any
wanted?
harm?
Yeah. Um, so I'm very excited for whatever happens in the future. But back to like what happened to the episode, because there were a lot of good conversations. Frankly, I
Yes,
can't
yeah,
even
back on track.
remember all of the ones that happened.
There were a lot. Like, all
Yeah.
of us had like 2 to 3 conversations, which is a lot. That's a lot of
Um,
role play. That's like that's the amount of role play we used to have
in like
back in like the
a
first 10
week, like
episodes.
seven, yeah, like 7 episodes for like 3 conversations. Um,
And we had more cast members back then.
yeah, I talked to 2 people. You talked to Edward
I
and
thought so so
Volna.
so technically Cather had 3 conversations because he talked to Vizon and Volna together. He talked to Abinthy, he talked to Edward.
And
And
Apathy.
I
That's the one.
suppose he did briefly talk to Leshka, our
Yes.
boy. Um
Well done, by the
before he
way.
left.
Very entertaining conversation.
Thank you, thank you. I was well. I literally at first just was gonna have them say like 2 things to each other as they just basically just walk past each other.
Yeah.
But I'm like, you know what? No, I'm gonna keep this going because I kept looking at Grant, who's just dying. I'm like, I'm gonna keep this going. I'm gonna milk this a little
Mm-hmm.
longer.
And then Edward talked to like 4 people. He talked to Tarak. He talked to Cather. he talked with his mom, and he talked with
Uh-huh.
his wife.
Yes.
I loved what he did with Sam. I thought that was a
Yes.
very good, like,
Yeah.
it's a trope, and it's a trope that I love. I love tropes. There's good
We got
tropes and
that
there's
trope.
bad tropes. I
Yeah.
think that a bold claim. Most tropes in fantasy are there for a reason and are entertaining.
Oh yeah.
And the romance trope of like, let's just have one normal day when they're facing like impending death.
Right.
It's such a good trope. It's such a good trope.
I mean, it's
It's
like
so good.
I mean, and it's very sound logic when you think about it, because
Absolutely.
like when you think about it, it's like why would you get married at a time like this? It's like why wouldn't you get married at a time like
Why?
this?
What
Like
other time would we have?
exactly, you know, we're all gonna die here soon, so might as well do
Mm-hmm.
it while we still can, you know?
You see, that's another thing that I like about. It really cuts a difference between like Abinthy and like Edward, because
Hmm.
Abinthy is like, we could all die. That means I can't afford to get married, because that's a reason for me to survive.
Hmm.
So like, we'll get there once we win.
Right.
Like for
Well,
Abinthy, there
see,
isn't like a we could die.
yeah, I was gonna say, I think it's also just a matter of, in Edward's mind, the whole world is gonna end, and
Yeah,
everything's gonna be
like
terrible.
we're gonna
In
try
Abinthy's
to stop
mind,
it.
yeah, we're gonna try to stop him. But in Abinthy's head, it's like, nah, no, we are gonna win.
Yeah,
We're not gonna try to win. We are
we
gonna win.
we
It's a
could
fact.
die if we blow it. So I'm just not gonna blow it.
Yeah, I'm just gonna not
We're just
do a
going to
bad.
succeed because I'm driven to succeed, and that's how it's going to work.
Because yeah, I choose success, and therefore we succeed.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my
Um,
goodness! Imagine if Abinthy had the wish spell, dude.
I could have taken it multiple times, but I'm like, no. I don't like having to think as hard with the wish spell. I think it's a bit of a cop out. I also think that it's one of bold claims. This is my hot take of the night.
Hot
I
take.
think that the wish spell isn't that fun.
I mean, yes, I can understand why. I think personally, it is one of my favorite spells, just because of like just the idea of like the capstone of magic ability for wizards or other
Mm-hmm.
spellcasters. You know, like the idea that
You say a thing and a thing
to a
happens.
limited extent you can do anything, right? Like that's rad in regards to like power fantasy. But mechanically speaking, and like actually like to serve a story, it's very hard to use the wish spell, because it's just like, congratulations, you can do maybe anything, possibly ruin the entire campaign, and also assuming that you whatever you choose to do succeeds, you are also a cripple for the next 5 days.
Yep. You just got nothing going on.
And so it's like, when do you use the spell? Like, you could use it in combat, but like there's like two things you can use it for in combat without just absolutely ruining
Well,
yourself.
yeah, you just need to use the abilities of the spell that aren't like just make it up.
Right, because like the base things you can do is cast any spell of 8th level or lower.
Mm-hmm.
You can like cause like a reroll of a die, I think,
Yeah,
and
something like
then
that.
you can also like bring like your allies like full HP or something like that, like fully restore them basically, like they
Yeah.
have a long rest.
Um,
And that's like,
the
yeah,
you can also use it whenever another spell says without the wish spell. So like there are certain spells that it's like this can't be removed unless you use a wish spell.
right, yeah,
And so like then the wish like has a guaranteed function in that situation.
right.
So it just automatically had like it's like it can if we know that the wish spell would work like that. I don't like it.
Oh yeah,
Bold
oh I
claim. I'm just
forgot.
not a
You
big
could
fan.
so let's see. I just looked it up because I was actually curious.
Mm-hmm.
So you can create one object of up to 25,000 gold, and is it magical?
Yep.
So basically, you can make your party rich.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Allow up to 20 creatures that you can see to regain all hit points and end all effects on them described in the Greater Restoration spell. Uh, so that's like the removing curses that require
Yep.
like a wish spell kind of function. You can grant up to 10 creatures that you see resistance to a damage type you choose. I didn't realize you could do that.
Is
That's
it
very light.
permanent?
Well, it just says you grant up to 10 creatures that you can see resistance to a damage type you choose. Period.
That sounds like a good use to me. Yeah, and now mind you, those ones don't tire you out, so you could just cast it every day. Just go
Yeah.
down the
Just
list.
just just go down the list and just keep gaining
Make your
resistance to
entire
stuff.
party just better
Well,
barbarians.
because yeah, I think maybe it's something that could be dispelled, I suppose,
Yeah, I suppose. But you would
by
still
like a.
need to hit like a 19.
But yeah, it'd probably be, but it would be a DC 19 for like a dispel magic.
Get out of
Um,
here, Grant, with your 10 bits. Get out of here.
um, let's see,
You
where
could
was I?
join us if you wanted, Grant.
Uh, you could also grant up to 10 creatures you see immunity to a single spell or other magical effect for 8 hours.
You see that
Wow.
because it says for up to 8 hours. That implies that the resistance is
That the
permanent.
resistance is permanent. Yeah,
Like
yeah,
you just
100%.
have that.
Uh, and it says, for instance, you can make yourself and all your companions immune to a lich's life drain attack.
Now the
That's
awkward thing about that is you
now
need to
see
like know what's going on.
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You have to have some amount of knowledge.
Also, that requires like kind of metagame knowledge, doesn't it?
I mean, yeah, technically. I mean, but I suppose, but it does operate under the assumption that, like, hey, certain magical abilities and effects are known knowledge
Yeah, I
to the
suppose.
characters,
Yeah.
right? You know, it's the same. It's the same thought process of like all the characters in a story know that they are stronger than when they started. You know.
You know what it feels like?
Hmm.
Um Ooh, that's a smart idea, Handskate. Make you immune to anti-magic field.
Yeah, I was also thinking like make yourself immune to like to counterspell.
Counterspell wouldn't be bad, yeah.
Like
Um
that's pretty great.
it also feels and this is one of my least favorite things that Dungeons and
Oh my
Dragons
goodness.
does. Is it feels a
Aaron.
little bit like that function is like a DM spell function, where it's like
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
player is
I mean,
like
it's
force cage is a real problem. Every single member of your party has force cage.
yeah, it does have like a similar issue to like imprisonment because like the
Yeah.
problem with like the imprisonment spell, for instance, if you take it at face value, it's almost impossible for a player to ever successfully cast it
Mm-hmm.
because it requires knowledge that there's no way that you would like as a player should have.
Yeah.
Because since you have to since basically the materials have to be crafted with the amount of gold exceeding or equal to a certain number of hit points that you're trying to imprison.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no way for me to know what the hit points are ahead of time.
Yep. It's very much a like we show up and there's someone who has been imprisoned that we have to free. How do we do it?
Right. And then
It's
the last
like the like wall of the like rainbow wall, the prism wall.
prismatic wall.
Yeah, prismatic wall. That's like, I mean, first of all, it's not a bad spell for players to take, but it's so very much like it's a DM spell where it's like, oh, you need to get to the other side of this wall, so you have to like figure out how to get rid of each layer, or else you're
Right.
going to be burnt to a crisp.
Right.
I don't like
Yeah.
DM spells. Get them out of here. Make spells available to everyone, and if you want DM spells, make them yourself.
And then then the last written ability, you can undo a single recent event by forcing a reroll of any roll made within the last round, including your last turn. For example, where spell could undo an opponent's successful save, foe's critical hits, a friend's failed save, yada yada. So basically, you get a luck point for the whole previous round, which is potentially very impactful because since you don't have to use it right away, you know, you can
Yeah,
see.
yeah. I
But
mean, you get to choose like the most impactful roll that happened in the past round.
right, but it does overall feel kind of weak just because like it's basically you get a luck point.
Well, yeah, like I probably would have written it like you can choose a roll in the past round and determine if it was a
success or a
or a
failure.
fail.
Yeah,
Like
that would feel better.
it would also mean that like you could reverse a boss's legendary resistance.
Oh my goodness, that would be
Like
yeah.
that's like a powerful thing to be able to do with a ninth level spell. Is
Yeah.
like someone's like, I cast power word kill or something. No, that doesn't require a roll. It just
I was gonna
requires
say
a
the nice
certain
thing
amount
about
of
power kill doesn't have a save.
But you know,
Just
some like
happens.
some big high power like that's a good example. Literally, you have some other spellcaster and they cast imprisonment.
Hmm.
And you, for some reason, you have a fighter in the party, so you know how much health the opponent has.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then they're like, we've been planning this for months, and then they succeed on the intelligence check, and then you're like, no.
Oh my goodness. I just realized that that totally is the only way to actually use like imprisonment properly is you have to know who you're trying to imprison beforehand, have a
Yep.
fighter who can assess how many hit points they have, and then take a month to craft the item
Yep.
before you try to imprison
Or just imprison weak people.
them.
Just really lean into it.
Or
Um,
or what you just always do is just always craft the just most ridiculously expensive
yep.
thing ever.
Just walk around with like really, really, really expensive stuff. Now, to be fair, you can kind of like fudge it a bit because like most of the time the stuff that you're going to be like if it's just gold greater than the amount of hit points that someone has, like you can get like 1,000 gold worth of stuff pretty easily. And I don't know
Hmm.
any monster that has like over 1,000 hit points regularly.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, I mean the tricky thing is like it's like 1,000 gold per hit die.
oh,
So like
okay, then that's a different situation.
yeah,
Yeah,
and so it's like if they have 20 hit die, you need 20,000 gold.
yeah, something like that. Yeah,
So
yeah,
depending on what kind of game you're running, like that's
yeah. That's
potentially
just
very
unreasonable.
challenging.
But yeah, I could go on and on about how much I don't like DM spells. Like, just make it usable for player. Oh my goodness, there are so many spells that would be so cool, and they're just unusable,
Hmm.
either because of the cost requirements, or
Hmm.
because they were just like, I think that this would be too good if it was usable. The spell Globe of Invulnerability.
Hmm.
Abinthy has used it. Ooh,
Hmm.
Grant wants to join us on the call.
Wait, what? What?
Let me let
Grant to
me
4, special guest arrival.
let me transfer us real quick here.
What is this madness? What world have we fallen into?
Well,
What traps have befallen us?
in the meanwhile, I'm just gonna keep talking, because Grant's just right here.
Hello.
Hello.
They can see you, they can hear you. We're in it.
Oh wow.
Um,
Hello,
We are
everybody.
here.
but yeah,
We are here.
I've joined to the high level conversation that we're having today.
Well, I
I was
mean,
listening and it sounds like pretty
very up
dense
your alley,
stuff.
right?
Like pretty
Why is
great
it so zoomed
pretty
in
great
on
stuff.
my face?
I don't know, because that's how the camera is. It's zoomed in on all of
I
our
mean, I'm
faces.
fine with it. I'm fine with it.
I was
This is
gonna
what
say
we
yeah,
have. We've got shoulders in.
Wait, I have to say something.
What?
Oh.
I have to shout out Aaron real quick because we had a mountain of dishes.
Mountain.
Like picture in your head a mountain of dishes, and that's what was in our kitchen. And Aaron by himself did them, and I just had to shout
I mean,
that
it was
out.
like
'Cause
45 minutes. It wasn't that
Yeah.
much.
That's 45 minutes of dishes.
Eh. But yeah, it
Anyways,
was
you can
really
continue.
funny.
I'll just like sit here. I'm clinging to the bottom of the chassis
Our
while you guys
roommate-
trot along.
a roommate talked to me and he was like, "So, I've been trying to cook more, and it was only after like a week that I realized that the more I cook, the more dishes I generate."
My goodness, Grant, are you just trying to get as zoomed in as you possibly can?
And
Yeah.
yeah, that's what happens when you make food is you make dishes. But yeah, I'm talking about how much I dislike DM spells that are required.
Okay.
Like, the only person who could ever feasibly use this spell is the DM, who doesn't have to care about actually having the stuff required to use it. So like, imprisonment.
Like Magic Circle.
Magic Circle is one that, like, if you want it to fully be there, you have to cast it for like an entire year. And it's like no party is going to be there for an entire year unless they are like building a base, which does not have any support in
Yeah.
Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. There's zero
Yeah.
reason for you to stay in one place.
Yeah. It really because like the whole point of like of the game is like you're adventuring, you're going out to different places and fighting battles in strange caves and stuff. You know, you're not.
Mm-hmm.
you're not set up in a castle all the time.
Like, they could have done the same thing without having it to be like, you have to, in order to make this permanent, you have to cast it every single day for a year without missing a single day. They could have just had it been like triple the cost of the material components.
Yeah.
And that would like.
Yeah, and like I would argue like maybe like extend like the
Hello.
casting time.
Hi, Desi.
Like
Welcome.
if it's like if the casting time is like 10 minutes, like extend it to like 1 hour.
Yep.
You know,
like literally just like triple the stuff. Make it.
We're talking about nerd stuff, Desi.
We are. We're talking about nerd
stuff.
Yeah, we are very off track since we still haven't like fully finished.
Yeah, well, Grant showed
Desi
up
frequented my channel when I was streaming 2 months ago.
Oof.
So welcome.
Wow, Grant. Wow.
It's good to see you
just
again.
Let down your fans
It's been
by
2
not
months.
streaming for a whole 2
Well,
months.
I know, it's heartbreaking.
Well, now that you're here, Grant, we can have you talk about some of your conversations.
Yeah, put me on blast.
Because you were
last episode.
definitely one of the MVPs of last episode.
100%.
What?
I mean,
Thank
you had 4 conversations. Each one of them was an absolute banger.
Thanks. I actually wrote stuff down.
Yeah.
Before
we commented
We
on
talked about
that.
it.
Yeah.
We were very proud. It's like the
I had
first time
in
you've
my
ever
note
done that.
in my notes. I had like stuff that I had written that I was gonna say. This feels weird. Being on Table Scraps, it's nice, but it is definitely different.
I mean,
I've been
it is.
replaced
I
by
suppose
somebody. I mean, that's fair.
I suppose it should be weird, Grant, since you already met your one appearance per year quota. So
This is you've now doubled it.
Yeah.
You're killing it.
Wow.
Here.
I'm doing really well.
Let's see.
it's a shame DJ hasn't met that quota yet, though.
Really? Is that right?
Well,
I'm beating
I don't
DJ?
actually know. He
I think that
I mean,
he works on Thursdays. So
I mean, to be honest, though, like he probably has been on a Table Scraps this past year. I just don't remember it because
yeah, it
we're
was
already in
probably,
September.
Like early in the year, yeah.
Guys, like 2023 is like low key almost over.
It is. It's working on it.
It's halfway through the 9th month, which is 3/4 of the way.
Well, according to Grant's Twitter, it's still August. So
I literally tweeted like 2 days ago, I forgot how nice August weather is. And then like an hour later responded, LOL, it's September. It's like halfway through.
Everyone just roasts you.
Yeah.
that was
You know what I
too
want to
slow.
do? I
don't
want to
know.
make a playlist on YouTube that's like all of our actual episodes and then the table talks chronologically. So that I was thinking people probably want to listen to these as they listen to the campaign instead of just like flip-flop in between.
Well,
right?
I don't know.
Because it's kind of hard to listen to these like isolated, right? I don't know.
I
I'm not
mean,
here.
It's like 20 minutes of conversation about the episode, and then like 40
Okay.
minutes of us
I
going
mean,
like, man, I hate
like-
how Dungeons and Dragons
Drew,
has
is there
like
any
500 diamonds worth required for a 3rd level spell. That
Aaron
can't be
is
moved.
not wrong. We, especially if it's just Aaron and I, it is very common that we just get on a random rant.
Talk about some nerd stuff.
That being said, Grant.
Wait, Drew, wait. Is there any way to capture more of my frame? I know it's the silliest thing.
Well.
Wait, it's Aaron. It's on Aaron's
Yes,
side.
you'll have to ask
I
Aaron
can't-
because
it's
while
like,
I run the stream Monday evenings, Aaron
Yeah.
runs the stream for Table Scraps
I-
because
I
Table
just-
Scraps
it's-
is his show.
It's just in my head. I can get off the screen though. And
He
then it
can't-
helps me.
It's bugging Grant that he
I'm
can't
just
that we
such-
can't
I'm sorry.
see.
I'm
that
so
we
high
can't
maintenance.
see
I'm
his
diva
chests.
moment.
We can't see his chest. You know, Grant's been working out lately. He's been looking a lot better.
It's why I want to show off my body.
Yeah. He wants to show off his
It's really
biceps.
fine if you can. It's really fine.
Aaron, here's what I want
I'm
you
having
to
a
do.
diva moment.
Aaron, here's what you want. I want you to adjust it so that you only see his his eyes and above. Please do that.
Hold on.
That'd be so messed up.
Hold on.
Don't do that.
Hold on.
Or like just my mouth. Or just my microphone.
Yeah, just zoom in on that.
Hold on.
I would love to have Table Talks be an audio experience someday. I just have no clue how to best like do that.
Well,
Like
you know, I'm glad you brought that up, Grant, because I think there is a good way to do it. We just don't have the setup for it currently. But it's
There we
not
go.
hard to
Okay.
get the setup currently because I do think
That's nice.
I honestly think that table. Yes, Aaron. Yes.
That's an angle.
This is insane.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing.
There's
I do think that table scraps could thrive in a podcast environment since the episodes are shorter than our normal ones. Like since they're typically an hour to 2 hours, they aren't quite as good, at stream necessarily on Twitch. Like it's fine streaming on Twitch. It's just Twitch
Hold
likes
on, I've got a better one. There. Now your whole setup is included.
Yeah, let's go. See, I prefer this. I actually prefer this to.
I can make it a little bit cleaner.
For the audio listeners, if they ever exist,
Guys, this is
I am in the
officially
corner. I
becoming
am just the corner of the screen.
my favorite episode of Table Scraps ever.
Oh yeah,
'Cause
there we
it's
go. Oh,
just-
that's
now I have a
clean.
box.
It's just
I just
Aaron
realized
messing
it's not
with Grant.
centered. Hold on.
Yeah, I've been banished
There
to
we
the
go.
corner. I've been put in timeout. This is good, actually. It now just looks like I'm a GIF.
the
Just like a
cube.
GIF in the middle.
Well, see, what it is like on Zoom, where like you turn off your camera, it's just a little square in the center that just
Yeah,
has like
yeah.
the letter of your name. That's what it
Yeah.
is.
They're gonna think that your camera's off.
Yeah,
That's
like
beautiful.
Grant, just stand very still, and like nobody
Okay.
would know.
It's a
Anyway,
1-to-1.
So Aaron.
Oh wait, hold on. Yeah, go on, Drew.
Anyway, so Aaron, so we're talking about the most recent episode, right?
Yeah.
And how Grant just as playing the lovely Edward Nibley Fellows, hot name drop.
Did you know that? Did you know that, Drew?
No,
That-
you never told us.
Yes. Literally, nice candle shot.
Thank you.
Literally, since look, I have a pumpkin too. I have a pumpkin.
Oh, that's
Literally
look how
since-
homey this is.
I actually want to talk about this because since the beginning of the campaign, I have known that Edward's name is Edward Nibley Fellows, named after his grandfather Nibley.
See, I always thought it was Edward Newgate Fellows.
No, that's what everybody
That's
thinks.
the meme.
But nay,
Also,
it is Nibley. And
also,
Edward
can I
doesn't say
just-
that because he's embarrassed. He
Can
doesn't
I-
like
can I-
the name Nibley.
Also, can I pause for a moment and point out something, okay? In the paper dungeon, I am the one who's always made fun of for having ridiculous fantasy names for my characters. I'm sorry, but Grant's character, Edward, has a father called Newgate,
Yeah.
because that's a first name, and
Mhm.
Nibley.
Look, I
I'm
can talk
sorry.
about this.
I'm sorry, what? And
Also-
I have come up with the weird names.
Look, I have in my mom's name is Niefendil. Look,
and-
there's
yeah.
reasons for these names.
Although,
Drew.
okay, Niefendel, I'm okay with Niefendel.
It's very elf.
Yeah, that feels very, very like fantasy elven name.
What my name? Okay, chat says I was looking at chat. It said Aaron, Drew, and Candle, and then I look at the screen. Aaron has changed my name to Pumpkin, and there's a candle and a pumpkin. So
No, get out of here.
when thinking
Get your-
about Edward's name and his family's names, I had to consider a few things. Like what is the Newgate was creating a new time for the business. Wait, did you just edit out my face?
Yes, you told me.
How could you? There's nothing I can do. And then
Oh, man.
Niefendil means unknown because Niefendil is unknown by Edward. I could keep going, I guess, but yeah.
So-
Niefendil means unknown in Elvish.
So I knew
Yeah.
that
Pumpkin to
Edward's,
4.
that
yeah.
Edward's name was Nibley. I've known for a long time.
Yeah, and DJ has even accidentally said Nibley before,
Yes, I
and I've
remember
played
that.
it off like, "What are you talking about? That's so silly. What do you mean? I've never heard that name."
What's
in
Yeah,
my
going
life."
on, step bro?
I never caught that.
Yeah, and so I've literally kept this a secret since before we started, and I've kept it a secret the entire campaign until the name drop with his mom, which I'm so happy I pulled off.
I do appreciate Grant you playing the ultimate long con with
Yeah.
your middle name.
And everyone just
Nibley.
assumes it's Newgate because that's his father's name, but nay, it is Nibley.
Nay. See, here's the reason I thought it was Newgate. It was because like I figured your dad, like that's like totally something your dad would do, of being like
Absolutely.
of. Now I say that not okay. Not to clarify, I think there's nothing wrong with passing a name down to your children.
I'm like
Like
your brother is literally like
yeah, it's Dallas the Fourth,
yeah.
and I think
You
and I
can-
think
you
it
can
I
have
think
your
it's
face
actually
back
really
there.
cool. Like it kind of disappoints me that
Thanks.
DJ doesn't want to keep passing the
I'm
name
back.
down.
I've been released from prison. Wait, I have a sound for this. Thank you.
However, for some reason, in my head, Newgate is such of like just a just terrible narcissist of a person
Yeah,
that if for some
certainly.
reason when he does it, it's a bad thing.
Oh yeah, it's like
And in my
son
head,
will be
in my
the
head, like
embodiment
that's what
of
the N
me.
was for Newgate because like he wanted to own Edward, you know.
Names.
Anyway.
It makes
Crazy.
sense. It makes sense. Yeah. So last episode was a doozy. I was actually very intimidated by it because it was like it's the last show of like in my head, it's like the last show of our characters as they are with one another before the big fight. It's like in my head, it's like it's setting
the
up
last
the
chance
ending.
that you have to like resolve any like
Yeah,
character
you
growth
say anything that you want to say.
that requires
Yeah.
conversation, like anything with that. You've got one shot. Do not miss your chance to blow. This opportunity comes once in a campaign. Gotta the music. I don't remember the rest of the lyrics.
I was gonna say, I was wondering if you were gonna keep going with it or not.
The things we were setting up from like the very beginning were going to be noticed or like kind of resolved this episode. And so like there's obviously going to be resolution and stuff after the final fight, but today was like the last time to finally solidify some relationships and things
Yeah, yeah.
that we won't have the chance to solidify later. And it just feels good that we kind of stuck the landing, I think.
Yeah.
It's like relieving.
I would love
yeah,
to
it was
go
very good.
through all of the like all of TPD and just find every time that I have like set myself up for a future conversation where I just like I say like some random thing is Tarak and then cut to like 3 years later where I'm like playing Abinthy and I'm like, oh yes, this thing. So
You know, what? Speaking of that,
yeah.
one thing that I wish I still had to this day, which I mean, I kind of still have, but not really anymore, was the bone dagger that Tarak
Mm-hmm.
gave Cather, because like
I think about that all the time.
it would
Where
have
did
been
that go?
Well, so
Was
well
it used
now
on Prosius? I can't.
now it is a part of the handle for Cather's sword that he uses.
Oh, sick.
But Drew, because Drew's an idiot, used it in a really dumb way, like used the poison aspect of it in a really dumb way, because I was dumb, because like literally like there's so many things in my head of moments of thinking to myself like, man, like if like we
Really
do
wish
this
I
in the
had that
story,
dagger
like
right now.
it'd be really cool, like really cool, like thematic role play, you know, all these things to use this dagger right now, and then I used it on a dragon.
Hey, at least the dragon. Wait, did the dragon suffer?
I
'Cause
mean,
that was the whole
no.
point. The
No.
whole point of the dagger is
We-
like, I now torture
the whole,
you.
Yeah, the whole
before you
point
die.
is that you stab it and you walk away, and they within the next like week they die.
Well, maybe
but,
DJ will
like-
give us another torture device that Abinthy can craft.
That is
We
true.
won't
I
have
am
time.
curious
I
as
need
to what
ask
Aaron is
you.
going to craft for Cather, or what Abinthy's going to craft for Cather for the final fight.
I have
his
like
his
3 or
superior
4
outfit.
thoughts. So first, I need to know what magic items do you have? I know you have your sword.
Yeah, I right now. Here, I'll pull up my character sheet.
Oh boy,
be-
we're getting
be a
into
little
the
more-
magic items.
a little
Everybody
more
sit back
specific,
and
like-
relax.
So currently, the
Pretty sus.
items that Cather's attuned to
You've got 2.
is he has his sword, he has his blood free tattoo,
Okay, and the tattoo. Gotcha.
and then the third one's up for grabs. The only other magic items that require attunement that Cather has on his person is a ring of the ram and a cloak of fire resistance.
Now you do have magic armor.
Yes, I do have magical armor, but none of it requires attunement.
Yeah, but like I wouldn't want to give you magical armor because you already have.
No. Yeah.
it. Okay. I've had a couple of ideas in mind. I think I know which one I'm going to go for. And you'll see it on the next episode of The Paper Dungeon.
Of the paper. Also, I just now realized.
Yeah.
I wonder. Do you suppose the keep has any stockpile of potions?
I mean,
I bet DJ would
There's
give us
probably
potions
some.
if you said, "Hey, you think that maybe."
I'm just thinking to myself. It would be great if going into this final fight, I had a couple potions of speed, because I don't have any.
oh, you're fine.
Shout out lurkers.
Yeah, shout out to the lurkers.
My
You
brain
already
is
got
like
the
on.
main thing that you wanted
I don't
from a potion of speed, which is your speed is doubled. So
The main thing I want for my potion of speed is a third attack, Abinthy.
Oh yeah, I forgot that Cather was a fast boy now. Cather was like, "Hey, by the way, your speed is double."
By the way, I
And you get bonus
became
fast
a
actions.
sprinter in the sleep.
Yeah.
Yes, I learned
That's
how
true.
to run faster. I think that the
He
third
was
attack
like-
is like it's fine, but like it doesn't matter if you can't get to them. And see, that was the biggest.
But
thing that
that's
you
why the
needed.
potion of speed is great, because it gives me both.
Yeah, but here's the thing: if you have a potion of speed, that means that your running speed will be 240 feet.
Well, no. It means my running speed will be 120 feet.
Oh, it was only plus 30. That's a lot of speed, dude. And you can dash it as a bonus action, meaning that you can move 240 feet in one turn.
Yeah.
That's a bit
I don't see anything wrong with that.
I don't think you need it. I think that you don't need the drugs, Cather. You don't need them. You think you're too reliant on them. Plus, if you really need haste, Apathy is willing to cast it on you.
Okay, that's all I needed to hear.
But like,
Oh shoot, I was
time and a
muted. You
place.
forget who our DM is. He is Mr.
Okay, well, though, here
Play when I'm scared.
one thing
Yeah.
I will point out, though, part of the reason that I would like to have a potion of haste, for instance, right, is like if that third attack, while isn't necessary, is very nice, because that's like an extra 50 points of damage per
Yeah,
turn for
doesn't matter.
Cather.
not important.
And consider back DJ is already gonna be not pulling any punches for this fight, and like legit, it might already be like just a legit TPK for us.
Here's the thing. If DJ says that there's potion of speed, there's potion of speed. But I'm not going to say that we have any potions. I think...
You're gonna argue we don't?
No, I'm not going to argue at all. I'm just going to say, I don't know. Did we? Probably. Do we still? I don't know. I had to order, gosh dang, like, scrolls from some random merchants that I kidnapped. So, like,
Why
I don't
did you
know,
kidnap them, by the way?
maybe put some effort in.
You want me to put some effort in?
Yeah, kidnap
Okay,
your
I tell
own
you what.
merchants.
I tell you what. I will steal Abinthy's Amulet of the Plains, and plane shift plane shift teleport around. That way, I can get to some merchant and buy some potions of speed.
What's Cather's intelligence check?
It's not great. I think it's a +1.
Because let me tell you, you're gonna have to roll a 14 or higher every single time you do, or else you teleport to a random plane of existence.
Yeah, it's fine.
Just
I
kind of
mean,
like, I'll be right back, everybody, and then he immediately teleports into the plane of fire. He's like, oh god, oh no!
I exist in chat.
I'm happy for you, Grant. We need someone too.
My brain feels like split right now. I can't focus on what's happening.
That happens.
Anyway. But yes, those are the magic things that I possess.
All right. Well, I think I know what I'm gonna get you, and I think it'll help with some things that you might need.
I am.
We'll see what we can do here.
I am very excited for the episode and for Abinthy just to explain. Like, Abinthy's gonna give Cather like a superhero onesie.
It's just a mech suit.
Oh yeah, because Abinthy was like, oh, it was impossible to
Desi.
make things. By Desi.
Yeah, I mean,
Desi,
you did
say
talk
Desi?
about Catherine's
Desi?
glutes quite a bit. So
It was never the
How
glutes,
his
it was the
dimensions were
upper body.
impossible.
It was the bust size.
I accept it. Yeah,
Which,
the bust.
So that was a
size
One
was
Piece
big.
joke / reference, because canonically, out of all of the crew of the main characters in One Piece, Zoro has the largest bust size, which is wild.
Zoro's like a jacked guy.
Jack dude carries 3 swords, built like a barrel.
He holds one in his mouth.
Yeah,
like an absolute savage.
It's true. Yeah. Here's the thing. The funniest part about it is I don't think that it'll actually even go on your like person. Like, it isn't going to be like a shirt.
It's just going to
be like
I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see.
just like long johns. Or
oh my
like
goodness!
Underwear.
It's like it's
Abathy is just gonna give Cather a dancing sword.
It's just a shoelace, a single shoelace, and you don't even wear shoelace.
It's like
shoes
a
with
corset or
Yeah,
something.
dude. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a bottle of baby oil.
Yeah.
Just grease yourself up. It's bronzer.
It's your workout your workout glistening gel. You know. Oh my goodness.
It was pretty funny, actually.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Anyway, back to the episode.
I've got a couple of cool things going on in my mind. Grant.
Yeah, Grant.
I am here.
I would like to ask
MVP.
you. Out of your conversations, is there anything that you want to talk about? Was there anything that really struck you as interesting, cool, different? Really think back.
Yeah. I mean, I remember what I did for the most part this episode.
Well, that's good.
Because
I have some comments, if you don't mind.
But please, that's
well,
why you're here.
You did ask for it.
Yeah. So, let's go in order, right? The conversation with Tarak.
You're not
the
gonna
homie.
talk about your conversation with Sam.
Okay, I can mention what I did with Sam real quick. Just change gears.
Let's go chronologically.
That was
starting with
that
the
was
second
Drew. One. That was Drew pulling on the track switcher right at the last moment.
You just said I would have gone in chronological order, and then it started with not the first person.
He like sort of didn't talk to
Drew
Sam.
just solved the trolley problem, where we had 3 topics in chronological order from like Tarak to like Cather and stuff like that, and then he was like, I'm just gonna pull it towards one conversation, which is towards your wife.
Yeah, that's good.
Trolley problem
So
solved.
yeah, Edward's married. I liked how Edward made food. Everyone was like, "Oh, thanks, Edward," and Edward's like, "This isn't for you guys." He's like, I have a wife, guys."
I was actually like low key salty for like 0.5 seconds, and then he's like, "Oh, it's for my wife." I'm like, "Oh, okay, sure, yeah, all right."
So the whole approach on that, I didn't even decide before the episode that I would like do the whole Sam situation the way I did. For those of you who don't know, I basically was like, hey, Sam, look, we've never had a normal day together as like a married couple, so we're just gonna have a normal day. So their entire day, they just pretended like the end of the world wasn't the same day. And they like enjoyed their company. And I think that's so amazing. I did decide prior to the episode that I didn't want them to have this ushy-gushy, like, deep, dramatic conversation because it didn't feel like it fit. I'd already kind of had that with Sam. And I think all they needed was just time together, like, pretending or, like, without the external influence of the craziness of it all. And so to me, it felt really nice that Edward got that chance with Sam on the off chance that he doesn't in the future. So that was, to me, it felt very important because there was a chance that Edward won't come back. And the thought of like him and Sam never having a chance to experience being together in that capacity is really sad. So I thought that was pretty powerful. And if he dies, you know, at least they had half a day.
They
so that's
had
pretty cool.
one morning on the beach.
Yeah. I also loved how cringe Sam and Edward, or especially Edward, is with Sam,
Oh,
like
yeah,
when
dude.
nobody's watching, and how Abinthy and Cather or whoever it was
Literally
got
just
to like
just watching on the
watch
ledge.
them be super cringe. Like Edward
just
calling
hate on it.
Sam Pookie and like giggling and all that. Yeah,
It
just
was-
being like, oh, gross. I love
See,
that.
it was the bubble of wholesomeness that everybody wants to experience for themselves,
But like
absolutely
hate seen
but-
from a third
but
perspective.
hate seen, yeah, from another perspective.
Yeah.
Other thing that I absolutely loved was like Abinthy and Kath are observing this and then like kind of talking about the future. We talked about this a little bit. And then like Kath being like, you know, I'd like to go and fight that soul stealer. And Abinthy's like, well, I mean, I'm trying to kind of avoid vengeance. Like it's like consumed me for the past several years, but like I would be willing to count it as prevention. The real question is, do you think we can get Edward in on it? Like,
Yes,
let's
I
just
love that.
let's just imagine 5 years down the line, and we show up and we're like, "Hey, Edward, I know that you've been with your wife for 5 years now, probably looking to get a little bit of breather, kind of, you know, escape that ball and chain. How about a night on the town? Oops, fighting the soul stealer."
And that would be so on brand.
It would be so
That would be
like-
amazing. See, I could picture it too. Like they show up to Edward's house, and like Edward's like ready to, like, he's all dressed in nice fine attire and stuff.
Yeah,
And Catherine and
you
Abinthy
should
are
bring
both
your
just like,
armor. Just
it's like, ooh,
For
are you
old
sh-
times' sake.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
for
yeah.
all times, like, you should also maybe bring like your loot or something and like your sword, just in case, you know, just in
and
case
then, and then I lean over and I'm like, Catherine, he can teleport his sword to his hand. So just your armor. I mean, it would look, you look great in your armor if it still fits.
Yeah, that dig. I was gonna bring that up too. That was funny.
That felt good.
oh my goodness,
Yeah.
Edward
Okay,
with
and the
dad
thing is,
bod.
it would definitely work. I think Edward would be furious about it, but then he would be like super into it.
Yeah,
he would be
he's
like,
like,
he would
"Well,
pretend the whole time that he's
I
angry,
guess-
but he isn't.
I guess I
he's
can
like
get back in
he's
the
like
saddle.
Bob from The Incredibles, where he's
now-
like itching to get out of the house, get away from
Yeah.
the kids.
Yeah.
I used to be an
You know,
adventurer.
I used to be something, you know.
Oh my goodness, that would be so so ironic if it just the story of Edward boils down to he was an adventurer, and the whole time he was an adventurer he hated it, and then he stopped being an adventurer, and the whole time he hated it.
I mean, that's the way that it works, though. It's like you do something and you get good at it, but it's not something you enjoy, and then you stop doing it.
Uh-huh.
But like you were very important when you were doing that thing, and so like you're sitting there, you're like, well, now I'm just a nobody.
Now I'm just some loser.
Life post adventure will be strange.
Now I'm just some like one of the strongest people on the planet,
on the planet. Yeah,
and
And
I
I
got
just-
nothing to do
and
with my
and I'm
skills.
doing nothing. Yeah,
It's like going to
I mean he
college.
doesn't rule a city anymore.
And then Edward will realize, wait a second, is this how Clovar felt?
And then he becomes the villain.
oh,
He released the last of the 6 truths.
Edward diverts to Clovar's side by the end of the campaign because he realizes that the end of his own journey is futile and he needs to capitalize on his opportunities as he has them.
He has to like dig through his sock drawer to find the rod of 7 parts.
Sam, hear me out.
Like it's just
Clovar had a point.
I love the idea of like 20th level adventurers living very mundane lives where like they like open their closet.
That sounds like legit sounds like the name of an anime.
Yeah.
That like is an anime.
Probably
20th
These-
level
these-
adventurers retired
these
to a mundane
like
life.
level 100 adventurers live a mundane life, and it's a slice of life where they're like digging through the closet to like find an umbrella, and they throw out like, oh yes, this is Balmung the Demon Slayer, and they just like throw a sword behind him, and they're like, I can't find the umbrella. Like that's just gonna be Edward's life, where he's gonna have like kids and a wife, and then every once in a while a kid's gonna show up, and he's like, where did you get that? And he's holding the rod of 7 parts, and the kid's like, eh, and like runs away, and he's like, put that down.
I would love it if one of the one shots like Patreon one shots that happen afterwards is just like 30-minute to 1 hour episode of just a slice of life episode of Edward
Oh yeah.
just being a dad. Oh my goodness.
Oh, that's a good idea, actually.
At
That
some
would
point,
be-
it's
And
at some point
you know,
in time,
who knows if he's still the Pied Piper?
Yeah.
Like, he still has that going for him.
That would, yes.
It-
Like
the
your
keep
kids
is
discover
still-
your entrance to the Batcave.
Yeah, maybe he has a like a sidekick son named like Dove or something. Or like
No,
Pigeon.
no,
Pigeon is more like
no,
it.
no,
His name
no.
is Mouse.
No. It should still be in the realm of music, you know.
Well, I was thinking like Robin, Dove.
Well, yeah,
or-
yeah, I know what you were going
Not that
for.
I'm taking any inspiration from
Look,
Batman. It's
pigeons-
just a deep, you know.
Pigeons are the rats of the sky.
That's what I'm saying. And like Apathy is the
Apathy
rat.
is the rat. You're the Pied Piper. I get it.
So the
It is funny.
conversation with Tarak.
Why are most superheroes animals?
Because animals are like really.
Animals are
easy.
superhuman, bro.
Yeah, they're just really.
Although
That's
I
why they're
say-
animals.
Although I did just say that and realize that it's like 5, and like all the superheroes aren't, but still.
Yeah. I mean, but you know, you got to draw inspiration from something. But anyway, conversation with Tarak, Grant. You wanted to talk about it.
Yes.
Why do I let you
I
on
did.
the show?
Why?
I will
Uh,
condemn you to the corner again. Don't make me. Do you really want to test me right now, Grant? That's a question you got to ask yourself.
So Tarak, the conversation with Tarak. Edward had finally learned what his given name was. The name given to him by Tarak. Edward Lulkul Kadar, Edward Dragonflower. What Edward had learned is that a dragonflower, this is essentially what he said in the conversation, a dragonflower, it's not about the explosion that happened. Oh yeah, to those of you who might not know what a dragonflower does, if you touch it, it explodes. Otherwise, it's just like sitting there, and it looks sort of pretty. And so there are a lot of ways you could take that. Also, like if you touch it and it explodes and there's another one nearby, it's like a chain reaction, like dynamite or TNT in Minecraft. And so the thing is, it could have been about explosion, could have been about beauty, could have been about the arcane, it could have been about a bunch of stuff. Like Edward's potential not yet met and something needs to happen. It could have been any of that stuff. But Edward's final understanding of what it actually meant was that in the same way that when a dragon flower is touched, it explodes, Edward reacts according to his nature exactly when he needs to. Like you touch a dragon flower, it blows up. It does exactly what it's meant to do, exactly when it's meant to do it. And Edward has historically done the same thing. He will act or react to whatever he needs to, exactly when he needs to, according to his own nature. That's just always how he's been. And that's what he learned Dragonflower meant. And he also had, there's this whole piece to Edward that's very obvious. That has to do with listening and hearing and slowing down and accepting things. That has to do with music, has to do with magic, and it's a big piece to his character. And a part of what he learned with the Dragonflower was that he had failed to do things according to his nature in the past because of his fear, because of his self-doubt, because of his uncertainty. He was always seeking to understand things, and since he didn't always, it prevented him from being or doing things according to his own nature. And he's also learned that he's good, and he's certain of that now. So he's no longer afraid of how he might respond. So now he is in a place of accepting things and being willing to respond to them in a way that he believes is right. It's a lot to do with his own choice making, which is also very in line with orcish philosophy, which is being able to make your own choices, being able to be free in that manner. And so, although it's a multifaceted thing, it made sense for Edward to land there and for it to be his given half-orc name by Tarak. And then Aaron really took it and ran with it by saying that there were more names that Edward himself has to discover, which I particularly loved. because that kind of introduced a theme that happened through many conversations, where this is only the beginning for Edward. Like, this whole campaign was leading up to him discovering that there's a whole lot more to discover about himself, which I think is beautiful.
I just now realized
So cool.
This whole campaign is Edward's backstory.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of. That's kind of the energy, right? Where it's like, this is how this person was formed. This is how he started on this self journey.
You know,
it's so cool.
I am curious now, Grant. Now that I just said that, what was Edward's backstory at the beginning of the campaign?
You really want to know?
Yes, I want to know.
He grew up in his estate.
Uh-huh.
He was pretty much closed off from the world. Only went out a handful of times. He had tutors. He was told stories. He enjoyed music and magic that he had a limited ability to practice. And his father continuously told him that they were a waste of time, while his mother thought that they were actually beautiful. He didn't know hardly anything about his mother. He was essentially just training to take over the father's business. But his father, this is an interesting tidbit too. His father and his lineage was human, and they were like completely human. And Edward is half elf.
Right.
And it's worth stipulating that Edward was an accident, as far as like a kid, like having a
for him being born.
Like, he was an accident isn't the best word for it. He was unexpected. And so
he was not an intended child.
Not intended. So a part of Edward from the beginning was like, his father was dissatisfied. His father was embarrassed by him. His father didn't want him out in the world. But also, he was his only son, and so he had to take over the company. So essentially, Edward was just like closed in. He didn't have many friends, much of a social experience. The only things he really understood about the world were things that he was told or stories that he had heard. And so it makes sense that when he went out on his own, because he went out into the world, he saw how messed up it was. He was like overly he was very naive and like optimistic about like, oh, we could actually do something. We have money. We know things.
Right.
He also had been taught that people's problems with money was because or like people's problems in life, I guess, less so about money, but it's in the same circle. Like, people's problems in life came about because they were morally like wrong. And if you were prosperous in life, you were morally right. It was because you're doing things properly. That's what Edward was taught, which clearly isn't true. It's a really messed up way to understand how the world works.
It's like saying that the people in power are in power because they are good people.
Yeah, which
and the
clearly isn't the case.
The people are like that. People who aren't super successful are bad people.
Right.
Yeah. And so from the beginning, Edward had strong, good intention and like a really poor understanding of how the world actually worked.
Yeah.
And he wasn't, he was bad at social skills. He was very pompous, obviously, because he, in his mind, since he's like doing fine, he's like morally good and fine, and everybody else needs to be taught how he thinks and how he does things.
Right.
So he goes out, he's like, even the way he talked about like Tarak and the way he saw people in the community who had less, in his head it was like kind of a salvation, like a savior kind of complex of like, I'm gonna go there, I'm gonna teach them what I know, I'm gonna give them money, and like, I'm gonna change the world, we can do this. And then he gets there and he realizes that like his goals aren't really that easy to achieve, and also he like is vastly underprepared for the world.
Life literally blasts him into the dirt multiple times, sometimes using a dragon.
And so that was the starting point for Edward, was in a lot of ways the actual starting point for Edward. Other than that, he was like a homeschooler.
Yeah.
Like a rich homeschooler.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
No offense to homeschoolers out there, But that's
Hey,
literally what
I
he
was
did. Is he was homeschooled and he was rich, and that was his backstory.
I'll say it. Incredible offense to homeschooled people. I was homeschooled for a year, so I can say it.
I was gonna say I was also
That's good.
homeschooled for a year.
Yeah,
so.
yeah,
That's good.
yeah.
The reason I asked Grant it is because like in a serious tone, like I was more so just curious like how fleshed out like the backstory was for Edward in regards to like specific events and moments and specific people that were involved. Because like for instance, right, like I'm thinking like about like honestly, Catherine's backstory isn't even super fleshed out in all honesty. Mostly just because it encompasses such a broad span of time, since you know he's an elf, and his backstory encompasses over 100 years of life, which a lot of it he doesn't really remember. Um, but there's still very key things and key fleshed out like moments of that, like that define like a specific backstory, so to speak. You know, a pre-adventure that he's already been on, which you know is obviously what shaped him into what he was at the start of the campaign. So I was just curious. I was genuinely curious if like, you know, looking at it from an outside perspective, so like just taking a step back, if like, yeah, if calling the campaign Edward's backstory is like the most accurate description, and it does actually feel like it's kind of true.
Well, yeah,
'Cause
it's the interesting part about this campaign is that depending on whose perspective you follow, the point and like theme of the campaign changes drastically. Like, if you follow it from Cather's point of view, it's very much a like hero's journey type of story, like
Redemption and like
and
his
the,
purpose,
and there's
his
the moment
destiny.
where there's the fall and there's the mentor and it's like you have been chosen, you're given a mission, and like you go out and do the things and then you fail, but then you come back and you train and you get stronger and then you conquer, like that kind of stuff. And if you look at from like Tarak / Abinthy's point of view, it's almost a story told in reverse, where like like Tarak was the point of Abinthy's mission up until this point. And so like the actual main character of the story didn't show up until halfway through the book.
Right.
And so like it just takes a very different turn depending on who you look at it from.
Also, Abinthy has had like a unknown number of incredible stories about him when he was even more powerful than he was when he was with us, I believe.
Yeah.
Like he had already done this type of thing, and so like in my head, it's also just another part to Abinthy.
Yep.
He's like,
Another
oh,
one
here
out
we
of
are
the-
again.
Another one.
You know,
out of
it's not like his thing.
the book. It's the longest story in the book of Abinthy Tales. Now
He's got like other stuff to think about and worry about.
So speaking of going back to your conversation about the Orcish names, one of my favorite things that Track talked about early on in the campaign when he was like talking and explaining names is how names function on both sides of the coin, where the person shapes the name but the name shapes the person. So like the name that you already have, it determines and explains characteristics of you, but they do not change who you are. In reality, it is how you interpret the name that changes it. So like people can look at a name and hear Dragonflower, and they will take their own kind of interpretations of that. And they may see it as like, oh, look at him. This is someone who sat dormant for a really long time, and then all of a sudden exploded in fervor and power and strength. So like that's what it means.
Sure. Or he seems unassuming, but he has so much potential. There's so many ways you can
like
take
a root
it.
system lies below the surface, like but at the same time, like Edward has his own definition of it, and so in doing so he shapes what the name means, which is this is something that I've really enjoyed doing between Track and Abinthy, is saying the same thing in multiple different ways. So like literally what that is the same as Abinthy saying people are just the stories that they tell and the stories told about them. It's literally the exact same concept, just told in two different ways, which I really enjoy doing, and that has been like an ongoing theme, and like how I've been like playing Abinthy is like, what things can I say that Tarak already said and now are given more credibility because Abinthy has said them, which is kind of cheesy due to the fact
our neighbor is driving his motorcycle. I've been muted.
due to the fact that I'm playing both of the characters. So it's like, now I've done it for other things that characters have said too. Like, one of my favorite examples was the like, well, it may be a blind faith, but I pray it's not a foolish one. And the Cather's sitting there like he just got punched in the stomach. That was like one of my favorite moments in this campaign. But yeah, it's been a fun time with Abinthy getting to do stuff like that.
And when Edward talks about, this came out more with the Catholic conversation, but when Edward talked about like the people who he had learned these lessons from, he like Tarak in his mind was always the like first. Like Tarak will always be the greatest lesson to Edward. And he finally had the chance to say that to Tarak, which is just something he had to do. Even though he kind of knew Tarak didn't need to hear it, he had to say it. And then from there, though, he sees like everybody. And if you think about it, like in Edward's life, Charles was the first one that was like impactful. Other than that, literally the people he listed, like Havel, Melora, Cather, Abinthy, Tarak. Is that everybody? Renaya?
Yeah.
Did I say Melora?
You already said her.
Yeah, okay. Like the group, the people who he had done stuff with, apart from the NPCs. Like, they're literally the people in Edward's life.
Yeah.
Like, and I, sometimes that doesn't come through, which is okay, because like your point, Drew, is like, what was Edward's life before this? The truth is, this has been his life. Right. Ever since he left. Yeah, and so to Edward, his teachers are the people around him.
If we were to start a new campaign after this with the same characters, we would show up as NPCs. If you still played Edward. Like, that's how the like backstory thing works. Where it's like,
oh yes,
these are the people that raised me as a child, and then it's like, hello. It's me. Oh boy, it's me, Cather. Oh, I raised you from a wee boy.
Yeah, like everything Edward has learned that is like about anything that's consequential to himself and how he sees the world is pretty much from the group, the game, which is really cool. It's really interesting. Is there anything else you want to point out about the conversation with Tarak, Aaron?
I don't have anything. I talked about it a bit before we got here.
Cool.
I was going to ask,
very good, though.
Do you guys have anything more that you super want to talk about this past time? We've been going for almost 2 hours.
I think we should talk about the Cather conversation.
Oh, yeah. Which one?
The one that I had with Cather.
Go for it. Yeah.
I think I owe to Drew, and I want to talk about
conversation.
If you guys are okay with going
live your dream.
long.
I just wanted to know what the general scale is. Like, most of our past episodes recently have been like an hour long because it's just been me and Drew. We've only had so much to talk about, but like 2 hours is not long at all. So
sweet. And then also I'll probably mention a little bit about his conversation with his mama too.
With the name drop of Nibley.
Yeah. One thing I talked about, Aaron, after I talked about this with Aaron after our episode, is how, not to pat ourselves on the back, but I think the way the episode went and how the conversations happened, it felt very natural. Like in episodes past, like a while ago, I would feel this like trope coming out. I don't know if trope is the right word. It would be like the same thing happening over and over, where it would be like, okay, there's a bit of a break in the story. Now I'm going to have a one-on-one with this person. And that's fine and all, but like if you've ever seen The Flash, you know what I'm talking about, which is like this painful, like somebody gets upset, they walk out of the room, somebody says, I'll go talk to them, and then they leave. It's the same thing every episode, like multiple times an episode. And if you love The Flash, like it's got cool parts, but that particular piece,
Yeah, I
but
mean,
it's
the
not that we
Flash
did that exact
especially-
thing. It just feels unnatural. It's like plastic. It gets, you see the pattern, and then it's like feels uncreative.
Yeah.
I don't know. And so I felt like that was happening and how we kind of approached like character interaction. But this episode, it was like the day unfurling as it went. Like, for example, a very obvious transition. There are a lot of these things, like they come into the breakfast area. Edward's like, I gotta go talk to my wife, and then he leaves. So like there's like this interaction, this like segue. There's this time where Edward's fighting Tarak, and Edward falls off the tower, and he lands next to Leshka and Cather, and then Tarak and Leshka leave, and then he's left with Cather. And it's like, it just felt very natural. It didn't feel like it was forced. It just felt like how the day ought to go. I don't know. I just liked that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is, like, I think specifically with that point, like, I think it's not something that can be done every episode, because like sometimes the only way to have a conversation that needs to happen is by going and saying, I go find this person to talk to them, right?
Yeah,
like,
there's some drama to that too. Like you're seeking out this person because you have something to say.
Right.
You know, like there's a point to it too. I see you make a good point there.
But like, it does feel very nice when we're at this point where it's like, you know, we are able, especially, I think it's easier because there's fewer of us now, right? It's easier to kind of flow into that next thing without like accidentally stepping on any toes, or without forcing it. You know, it's easier just to kind of just flow with it. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, Edward
that was nice.
and Cather's conversation.
Yeah.
Also, okay, side note. I did love the segue with Leshka and Tarak leaving. And like just Edward just falls down to the ground.
The sand, bro.
And then Tarak swoops down on a warbat. Oh my goodness, dude. It was great.
I loved Leshka's sand moment. It tickled me so much when Leshka was like, I take out my sand and start throwing it around, and we were all like, oh gosh, Leshka, why? It was so funny to me.
So the thing with that though is like, literally, like, I'm literally sitting there. I'm like, guys, I literally haven't even described like how, like, what I do with the sand, and you guys are all freaking out.
With it.
And I'm just like, okay, sure, whatever, laugh it up.
Also, Tarak named my sword, which was cool. What was the name again? I forget.
Jeez, Natana.
It's okay.
Natana.
Yeah.
Katana, but with an N.
Which, yeah, I'll think about more. But that was really cool too. I had to toss that in there. Okay. Yeah, I had planned for the conversation I had with Cather. I originally expected as something I would do in like a group setting prior to the fight, but in thinking about it more, I had it prepared like before the episode, before this episode. So like over 2 weeks ago, or about 2 weeks ago.
Wow. No.
And it just made so much more sense to have with Cather, because in my head since the beginning, Cather was first of all a mystery to Edward a bit, because Cather operated on faith. Right. And faith is not something Edward is used to doing. Like, he's not used to believing in something without fully understanding it. That's like so counterproductive in his mind from the beginning. And so for that reason, he was also always very curious with Cather, and Cather prompted a lot of important like questions for Edward, like a different way to think. A lot of the times early on, I think Edward probably saw Cather as misled. I think literally he uses the word misled in conversation to some degree with people.
Well, and that so that does bring up, because like they're like early on in the campaign, like this happened. Edward wasn't the only person to do this with Cather, but I'm pretty sure Edward specifically used delusional. I wouldn't be surprised. We're talking about Cather, and I remember this because I went back and watched. Went back and watched some of the early episodes, somewhat recently, And in the episode where we first met Kiamura, and I and Cather and Malora go back, save Kiamura from the guards, and bring Kiamura back to the rest of the party. Like basically, like they come in, explain what happens, and like the conversation breaks down because there's a bit of tension between like the rest of the party confronting Cather, and also inversely Malora, because Malora is defending Cather. About like, dude, what do you mean you fought the guards for this stranger? Like, why would you do that? And yeah, and in part of that, like like Edward specifically, like, you know, called Cather delusional for like following these visions of the gods or whatever, which
Dang, that's pretty harsh. He was so, oh, he was so miserable to be around.
oh, but
Like,
but
I know, and I had to play him that way. It was rough, but I
was.
knew the outcome. It was worth it.
And
but,
look, I mean, but to look back at that and to look at Edward now, like it's really cool because it does genuinely feel like a full arc, a full story, a full you know, character growth.
and
Especially
I really
because
do feel like it was like slowly sliding the slider, like very slowly
Very
towards
slowly.
like
Yeah.
a semblance of a like reasonable person, like
Yeah.
you know.
Well, and to jump back to like, there's lots of tension early on, which honestly I did not mind. Like there are some moments where it got maybe a little more than it needed to be in regards to like tension within the party for like role playing stuff. But personally, I really like that because then it genuinely shows these are different people, right? These are different people from different backgrounds with different mindsets trying to work together, you know, which tells a better story, you know.
Yeah, it can be hard to do that well. Like it gets old to listen to bickering.
Oh yeah.
But there is like I like the realism of it. That's wandering into another topic that we don't have to get into. Like we've talked about how too much realism in a campaign can kind of kill the entertainment. And so like it's a show, so we don't want to be too realistic. We want to be realistic enough where it's like adept. Where it's like people can relate to what it's feeling.
People,
yeah.
It resonates and it's interesting and people wonder about things. Like that's important. So we've definitely gotten better at like the proper amount of realism, I think. And we're still working on it, you know.
I mean,
but anyways,
and especially like talking about like moving forward, right? Like we're gonna have to readapt again anyway, because like going forward,
we're gonna have to have completely new people and
new people, and that adds in a whole new little spice.
I'm so excited.
Not to mention the vibe of the campaign will be different too. So then,
absolutely,
some of the things that you've learned that fit in this like traditional fantasy setting, like sword and board sorcery type, is not going to apply in campaign 2. So
not to the same degree, anyways.
Yeah, like you may be able to take bits and pieces, but you're gonna have to learn a whole new kind of vibe for it, which is I think could be really interesting.
And I can't wait. I can't wait to see how that works. But if we were to look back at like Edward with Cather early on, thinking he's delusional, but also just being curious about Cather, there were times where Edward confided in Cather as sort of like a like older brother, like I don't know if that's the right thing. But like he's never had
Racer
siblings.
X and your Speed Racer.
Yeah, like kind of a mentor of sorts, somebody who is consistent. Edward doesn't have consistency. His mom was like kind of a drunk. His dad, kind of. She was a drunk. I just didn't want to say. It felt harsh to say, but she was like a drunk and like not present, but encouraging in some ways to Edward. And he was sort of oblivious to her lack of parenting. He saw her as like a really loving, amazing parent, but then like she really wasn't, but the best example of a loving parent to him. And then Newgate
compared to Newgate
really just wasn't a father. He was more like a supervisor to Edward. Like
an operating manager.
Yeah, it's really strange. And so seeing Cather, Charles was the closest thing to consistent. Charles was always doing his stuff. Charles treated Edward well, even when Edward was not treating Charles well. And you see that early on. Other than Charles, and like Tarak was also consistent to Edward, which he learned way later, but Edward was like not
Well, yeah,
in a
Tarak
place to
wasn't
like
approachable
understand that's true.
in terms of outside appearances, which
Yeah,
like
and
to
that was
Edward
really
that was
hard.
like his like tell, where he's like,
Yeah.
well, this person looks like a normal person, and then some like terrifying mongoloid shows up who's like, I've brought you a flower, and he's like, back, demon, back.
Gosh,
What are
he's
you
so,
doing
he was-
here?
He was just the worst. And so, all of that considered, Cather, out of the plethora of people in Edward's life, Cather was like probably the most like wise input, consistent person at the time. And Edward sometimes leaned on that. Sometimes he saw that. Sometimes he wanted more of it. But we jump to now, and now Edward is saying that Cather was the things that Edward couldn't be. And like he no longer thinks Cather is, you know, delusional or, you know, irrational in his faith. He even said, when I didn't have faith, you had faith. When I didn't have hope, you were hope. You know, when I didn't have light and I was like stumbling in the darkness, you were the flickering light. Which I thought was really pretty. That was ad-libbed.
I was gonna say that's like a great poem right there, kind of like that's like a psalm right there, you know?
Yeah,
Like that's fantastic.
And I knew that your little heart would love that too.
Yeah.
So that was a big piece of it. But so that was like after Edward had said some other things. The things that Edward was, the like little speech he had was about harmonizing, which I thought was so cool.
Oh, it was great.
Like Edward,
And it fit very
Edward
well.
has attempted to understand things, to control things. He's tried to listen. He so desperately wanted to listen and like feel and understand. I think he craved things like faith, but had no clue how to ever consider something like that.
Right.
Because it wasn't in his wiring.
Yeah.
And so
It
he
was
has
more
learned
of
now.
a strange fascination than a true belief kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like something he wanted that he had no clue how to get or how it would ever come about. And so, man, he is now like seeing things in a different way. He's like actually learned how to accept things and to listen and to not try to understand and control everything and accept that, and also accept himself and like what he has to offer and all that stuff. So like in his head, the difference is that now he's like working with the things around him alongside with the world in the right direction, along with everything else, like a river kind of floating along the river, which is also how the moat in my mind that he received works, like the moat of creation. And in my mind, it's like Edward kind of agreeing with it, allowing it to happen more so than he like evokes it.
Yeah.
So, which is different than his experience with magic. His experience with magic is I play music the certain way and this thing happens.
Right.
With the moat, it's more like I'm like okay with it happening and I like work alongside it, which is neat. Anyways.
Well, honestly,
Yeah.
and one way of thinking about it, which again fits kind of with some of the like progression with Edward, is the moat is separate from Edward and has a natural function of creation or destruction, and you are simply harmonizing and allowing it to do that function.
Exactly.
You
That's
know,
the exact
and this-
idea.
In the same way that Edward just, you know, has realized that he is a person meant to do a function, and he does that function well, he's allowing this other thing to do the function that it was meant to do. You know?
Yeah, and in Cather's conversation, he attributed a lot of that piece of it to Abinthy, of who he learned that from. Like, in how Abinthy presents magic as, like, this wild, like, primal thing that's, like, misunderstood. And, like, there's so much more to it than people know there is, and all this stuff. Like, to Edward, that sounded like hullabaloo.
Yeah.
He thought... And there's a very small number, but there are a select number of times where it comes out that Edward actually thinks Abinthy is a little crazy, which obviously would be kind of hurtful to Abinthy.
Well, also pretty true.
But I was gonna say also kind of true.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I mean,
but now
the whole party
now
is at
Edward
least
has
a little
seen it.
crazy.
Now Abinthy has heard what, like, or experienced what Abinthy was describing, which completely broke Edward's understanding of the laws of magic, and allowed Edward to like be okay with not getting it. Because he also understood how much value there is to like not needing to understand it, I guess.
Right.
It's complicated. But Edward in his conversation with Cather being like, but Clovar is different. Clovar is like controlling. Clovar does not consider the way of things. He just evokes stuff. He enforces things.
Right.
And in Edward's mind, that is fundamentally less powerful than using what already is happening, like going along with it, allowing it, being a piece of it. Yeah. And so in Edward's head, like what the group is doing and now what he is doing is in line with the way of things, and Clovar is in direct opposition to that. And so in Edward's head, the group fundamentally has a higher chance of actually succeeding, which is really interesting. And so in my head too, with Cather's idea of destiny, of fate, and Edward's idea of going along with the way of things, like, could be kind of saying the same thing in different ways too, which I think is kind of neat. Yeah. The three things that Edward scribbled on a piece of paper that he's trying to learn, kind of like mantras, because they are against kind of his understanding of things. Oh boy, if I can remember them. They were, the self is not created, it's discovered. Love is not, I have to look this up, guys.
Oh boy.
I forgive you.
Guys,
I have it on to my tongue. I just don't want to mess it up.
When our player looks through the notes that he has.
How dare they?
I got it. I was exactly what I thought it was. I just didn't want to mess it up. The self is not created, it's discovered. Love is not manifested, it's followed. And destiny is not final, it's alive within you. That last one, I love.
Oh yeah.
Because it implies a lot. It's hard to know exactly what that means. But at the same time, you know exactly what it means. Mm-hmm. Like, how destiny isn't something that's already decided, it's something that's like active as you are. Right. It's really cool. And I think that's probably similar to how Cather feels about the idea of fate and destiny as he's laid out in the past. So this like amazing moment of like Edward sharing these like fundamental like beliefs that he now holds about life and destiny to Cather, whom in the past like was a complete mystery to him, but someone who also holds these principles. Like, it's, I don't know, to me that's like such a cool moment of like Edward kind of validating Cather.
Well,
and like also agreeing with him finally.
Yeah, and I do think cool. So it's kind of interesting because Cather has been kind of wanting to have a conversation about surrounding fate for a while now. Pretty much ever since this is going not like way back, but a decent ways back when Abinthy first revealed aspects of his backstory and why he didn't like the gods, specifically surrounding like what happened with Talnasha, right? And more specifically how like Abinthy was upset that the offer for Talnasha was Glossia.
Yeah.
And of course like that whole situation kind of broke down because both Renaya and Abinthy were like really upset with Cather for like kind of being okay with it. And pretty much ever since that moment, Cather was wanting to kind of poke Edward's brain about it as to what he thought. It just never quite came around. But it is a kind of a significant thing. One for Cather, for Edward, I should say, like kind of full circle, kind of like having this character growth of kind of coming to an acceptance or understanding that there is like this way of things that you can kind of be either go with or against, right? Um, but I think, like you pointed out now, I honestly, I now that I think about it, I think it is the first time in the campaign that somebody has validated Cather, which is interesting. Like one of the players
Yeah.
specifically, I should say.
Yeah.
Like because the closest it ever came would have been with Melora at some point early on, but even then, like, while Melora certainly probably would have validated Cather's beliefs, I don't think a conversation like that ever happened while Hannah was with us. And so a moment like that never just never came around um before. And
It
so
also the conversation also started with Edward asking, "What do you really think will happen?"
right.
Edward was still so curious how Cather would answer that question.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so in a way Edward was like kind of testing what he learned with Cather. Like,
Yeah.
is what I think even like does this make much sense? What does Cather think? I want to hear what he says before I say what I think, because
Right.
maybe he will say something that kind
Yeah.
of disproves what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
it's
or,
like,
yeah, or makes
it's
you
like,
rethink.
hey, what did you get on question number 4?
Yeah. No. You tell me
'Cause-
first. You tell me
yeah.
first.
Well, I know that I got it right. I just want to see if you got it right.
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Well, yeah,
And so
but
that also like gives credibility to Cather's thoughts in Edward's
Uh-huh.
mind.
Yeah. Yeah, and I absolutely loved it. And for those of you who maybe did spot it or didn't spot it when you watched the episode, that conversation is the closest I ever came to crying on stream.
Let's
Which
go.
big props to Edward and Grant for doing that. Um, yeah, I think the only other time that I came close to crying, I think, was in season 3 of Between the Rows.
Really?
Um,
Wow. That's
and
crazy.
well, it was interesting too because like so this is a sidetrack. Going back to season 3 of Between the Rows is for me at least was one of the coolest experiences of role play and just Dungeons and Dragons in general for me, because like there were a couple different moments where like I felt like such a genuine amount of emotion that it was off-putting, because I remember there's this in like the third or fourth episode, I think, like we just had these dreams, right? These, like, all of us individually had these different dreams, right? And um uh shoot, well, I'm blanking out on his name. uh
Who?
the name of the character I played for season 3.
Was it Eugene?
No, it wasn't Eugene was Crowbar's actual name.
I can't remember. I feel like it was like a relative's name or something that was
Well,
like passed down or whatever. For
it was
you.
supposed to be a relative's name, but it's also but it's, oh man, I forget. Anyway,
Okay,
Some
whoever you
Oyster
were.
Jones.
but yeah,
Yeah.
but with my character, like, just had this really like terrifying and visceral dream of like burning in a forest, and then like we immediately after that like go to that same forest. Like I felt genuine fear in that moment of being like, oh my goodness, what is gonna happen to me?
Shout
Like,
out Aaron.
am
I
I going?
remember vaguely that experience too, where it's like all of a sudden we're in this hellscape and we don't know what's coming after us, but like there were like things in the trees or something. I can't quite remember, but I know what you're talking about. It's like the your stomach drops out and you're like, oh my gosh, what is
Yeah.
gonna happen?
And it
Yeah.
was both awesome and terrifying, because it was just like, oh my goodness, this is like one of the coolest and most unique experiences where like Drew is like is feeling like this very, very genuine emotion. It's not just me role playing. It's not just me acting. Like, I'm genuinely feeling like this terror that my character is feeling,
I
which
think
is
it's
super,
so hard
super
to
cool.
pull that off, like to really
Well,
feel it like from the DM
it
perspective.
requires a lot of it's not just a one-way street is what it is. So like fear is something that I'm good at. I understand like horror and like the off-putting nature of stuff, and like making people have that like pit of the stomach, like primal, like this isn't right, I don't think I like this. And like I know how to do that very well, but it can't just be on my end. The players need to put in a lot of work as well to like really know their character inside and out.
Yeah, and And I think the interesting thing for me was like we weren't in a particularly scary in like place where we were because like literally we were just in a forest walking up to like this tree that's like this isolated
Yep.
tree. And my character is terrified because he's thinking he's about to burn alive.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Mm.
such a unique thing because like there's no real indication that we're in any sort of danger.
Yep.
And I am terrified.
Well, yeah, and that's a real life feeling. So that, I mean, I know that I've talked about this before, but like that tree is based off of a real place that I know. Like it was like in my old house. We had like we lived on a medium to small sized acreage, and we had like trees in our pasture that had like we had mulberry trees and stuff like that. And there's this one part of the pasture that like there like nothing grew for like 13 to 20 feet in a radius around one single tree. And it was just like in the middle of like a grove of trees, and you're like,
It's so strange. It's like
so,
unsettling.
you would see it and you're like, there is, I know,
I'm sure there's a reason.
yeah,
for
like
this.
there has to be something. There's nothing in this like pasture. I've been in here 100 times, but like, do you really want to walk into the circle? Like,
Oh yeah. Well, I remember too, like everybody starts like walking up to the tree, and I'm just
And you're
like,
like, whoa, whoa,
I'm
whoa.
hanging back.
Whoa.
I'm like hanging way back, being like, I don't want to get near this tree. I don't know what's gonna happen to me if I get near this tree. I just had a dream about me burning alive near this tree.
They're like, hey, light it on fire, and you're like, I think not. No.
Oh my goodness, it was
It's all good.
so-
All you got was a little singed,
Wh-
so we're good.
Yeah, and it was but
In that-
super
in that
super
moment.
cool moment. I absolutely loved it, and I remember I while we're playing, I messaged Aaron. I'm like, hey, am I about to die here? And he's just like, nah, dude, you're fine.
Nah, you're good.
He like gave you the green light, like you can touch the tree. It's all right, dude.
Yeah, I'm like, we have
But,
to progress with the story. I need you to touch this tree.
Please,
but
Drew,
yeah,
I beg you, touch this tree.
but then anyway, but getting back on track, this moment with Cather, you know, with and this like again was like one of the other few times that I really kind of like was feeling it. Like there were a few times like in that conversation too that like Grant, you said something as Edward, and I got like full chills, you know, throughout
I
my body.
felt it too. Like when Edward was talking to Catherine, saying the like, you were my faith, you were my light, you were my hope. I felt it too.
I could
it was
sense
very
the Drew
emotionally
vibes.
charged.
Yeah.
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 Am I? Yeah, and well, and because pretty much pretty shortly after you said that, like I started to feel like in the back of my throat, like you know, like when you're getting really
Like,
emotional, like
closes
about
up.
yeah, and you're about
Yeah.
to like cry, and like I started to feel it in the back of my throat. I'm like, oh, we're going there. All right,
Oh no.
great.
I didn't expect
And so,
this.
and so I tried to just, you know, and I wasn't trying to force it. I was just trying to like let the moment happen. So I was very
I saw you
curious as
close
to
your
whether or not.
eyes.
Oh yeah, well yeah, there
Yeah.
were a couple times that like I did close my eyes and like okay, Drew, compose yourself here.
I've got
You can't actually break out into full sobs
I've
right
got
now.
a role to play.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, it was so cool. I love that conversation so much.
Yeah.
yeah,
Me too.
Two things. One, it's been so awkward. I have to imagine for Cather, because like the group, in terms of like how we play characters, has been like wildly different from like your character. Like
Yeah.
I am, as we've talked about earlier in the episode, I'm a big fan of the like the indomitable human will,
Right,
and
yeah,
like
like,
and like that
Apathy
kind of vibe.
Apathy is an anime character from an
Yep.
isekai.
And track 2 was very much a like,
Oh yeah, even track
by
was
the
did that.
power
Yeah.
of willpower we will succeed, and
Yeah.
those like very gods are there.
Yeah.
And like I think that you're crazy for just believing them willy-nilly. Like I understand faith. I have faith in my right hand and my left hand.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I have faith in. Like very like material, physical, like that's, I believe in myself and my own will.
Right.
And then like Edward was basically like like an atheist surrounded by God.
Yeah. Okay, I just a quick point too, like I loved playing
I feel
an
like
atheist.
Edward was more of an agnostic than an
Yeah,
atheist.
yeah.
No, well, I don't know. Like Edward did not have enough conclusive evidence in his life to think that the gods would exist.
He's
As
like,
crazy as that
there's-
I
sounds.
suppose. I mean, he did
He
live a
became
very sheltered
agnostic.
life.
Yeah.
Super sheltered, and he just thought it was like stories. Even history people thought were like very obviously true, like the trial. To Edward, he was like, "Oh, we don't know. It's just stories. Who knows if that's actually what happened?"
I've only seen this
Like-
in a book.
And then he started seeing gods, and he's like, "Okay, maybe gods are real, but I don't
like, are
think
they
they're
all that?
probably all the. Are they all that?"
Especially when you
And
have,
now
like,
he's like, "Okay, maybe there's something
yeah,
there."
when you have
He's
like,
still
Tarak
kind
as an
of.
influence. Who's
yeah.
like, no, they're not all that.
He's like, yeah. So, anyways, I just had to throw that in there because,
Yeah.
Well,
that was totally.
yeah,
agree.
I mean, and it is an interesting point because, like, at the start of the campaign, this is kind of backtracking a little bit from some of our previous conversation, but at the start of the campaign, there was Cather,
Mm-hmm.
who was full like man of faith. The next closest thing you had was Renaya, but even Renaya was like her faith situation was very unique in the sense of like it was less of a faith and more just like, oh hey, I'm really
There's
good
my
friends
friend.
with this.
Yeah.
Here's my friend Malice the God, you know.
Homie, the
um,
minor god Malice.
Yeah, exactly. And and yeah, like Tarak, who's the next faith person, you know,
Strangely
Who,
didn't-
as
enough,
Aaron was saying, is like my own will.
strangely enough, I think that actually in terms of like faith, Havel beat me out.
Yeah,
honestly,
I think you're right
that
too.
that
He
is
would
yeah, that's a
pray.
great point.
His dad had
'Cause, yeah,
some
like-
nefarious business
Yeah,
with
he
the
did-
gods.
he did. He was on some rocky ground with the gods.
Yeah,
but
he was
would
like,
say
"Oh, I
he did have-
absolutely believe in them. I have absolute faith in them. I have faith that they're going to be total jerks."
yeah,
Like-
yeah. I just hate them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is a totally fair point. But yeah, it really is a thing of like Cather's kind of been alone in the party since the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
And that's been tough. Speaking of things that are tough, Grant, you playing in a basically unlikable character for a very long time.
That was
Yeah.
hard.
Like, and
dude.
I know, like, when I
I remember after the sessions, I'd be like, "Whew,
I'm
guys,
sorry,
I'm sorry.
guys, I'm sorry.
That was so hard
Yeah,
to do."
yeah.
Like,
And like I
oh my gosh.
Well, and you weren't even the only one doing that too, because like even some of that was happening with Havel with Ryan.
Yeah.
Too,
there was we had a, I mean, we have and like it's hard to play like not chill characters. Like Abinthy started in like on the edge of self-destruction in
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
second half of the campaign in chapter 2, and then like fell off that edge
right.
and was like terrible for like multiple episodes. And like I had fun because like I enjoyed playing Dungeons and Dragons, but it was hard.
Yeah.
Like I
It's
remember
not easy.
like when Abinthy showed up at the keep and
I knew
just,
you were
like,
gonna mention
ripped
that.
into y'all.
Ripped into Edward too.
Like
who,
Edward, like Cather,
everybody.
I mean, everyone. Yeah.
like just
Yeah.
like like word murder.
said some really nasty things. I mean, he apologized.
Yeah, like
the
very
next day.
quickly.
Yeah.
But still, like, for that time, I'm sitting there and I'm like, God,
it feels
Ugh.
so icky. And to like
Yeah.
also say certain things, like Edward had some like flawed understanding of like people.
mm-hmm.
That's a very light way of putting it. Edward was pretty racist early on. He was.
Yeah.
That's what he was taught. And I, Grant, am not that way. Like it's hard to like really role play that.
Being despicable when you yourself are
It's
not.
like
Yeah.
it's like sandpaper in my
Right.
chest. It's like
Yeah.
it's so hard to do. But I think the thing with it too, and like trying to make it interesting and not just painful, is that like there are pieces to the character that are promising and that are like enjoyable and like lovable, although they have these like pretty serious flaws. And then secondly, obviously working on these flaws.
Yeah.
You know, like now
showing
Edward,
clear growth.
very clear growth. Although Edward at the beginning had a very flawed understanding of the orcs and was like afraid of them because of stories and things. Like now he believes that the orcs society is like beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, and he learned that from Track, and now, like, and that is a very clear growth. Not saying that he is like washed clean of that stuff per se, but he is now, he's learned from it, and he wasn't that person all along. And I think those are like the elements you need.
Yeah.
Like, I think if you're just an insufferable character
just
that has
terrible
no
all the time.
projection, nothing that's lovable about you, like that's just it's not gonna work.
Yeah, I mean,
It's-
like,
You know?
if Abinthy had been that way the whole time and there was never any apology, y'all would have killed him like episode 3.
Yeah,
Like,
100%.
he would not have
Well-
made it this far.
Yeah, and it is kind of interesting because like with what you guys are talking about, because that's the challenge that I'm delving into for campaign 2
Mm-hmm.
of being a little bit of a less likable person, at least initially. And the key to that, you know, with storytelling is when you have those characters, you have to show the softer side of them. You have to show as much as you show the unlikable parts, you have to show the likable parts.
Yeah.
You know,
It's
because otherwise you're just playing a terrible human being that nobody wants to be around.
exactly. You have to
Yeah.
like show the potential, and then you have to actually reach it. Because if you
Right.
don't,
Yes.
then it ends up into just gaslighting.
Yeah.
Where it's like,
yes,
I'm
exactly.
sorry, I'll get
Just-
better, and then you never
yeah, then
do.
Yeah, it just ends in bitterness.
Yeah, that's just
Yeah.
bad.
It's
And
it's
tough.
unsatisfying. It's and so it was nice to, you know, it was so rewarding after this last episode. Like I told Aaron this afterwards, where I felt more than ever reward for the fact that we've gone so long.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like I felt that episode was so conclusive to my own character, which
Right.
was so rewarding. Like the things that I had loosely held in my mind in like the very beginning of 3 years ago are like happening, and they're like happening well,
Yep.
which is so rewarding because
Yeah.
the entire time you're wondering to yourself, what will happen? Are my goals realistic? Will they change dramatically?
Yeah.
And to be on the other side of it and see like the goals being like achieved with the
Yeah.
character in a way that is like tasteful, man, it's like I just, you know,
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
a drug.
I mean,
I'm like,
yeah, Aaron and I kind of touched on this too a little bit, talking about like Cather too, like has kind of he is kind of come in a full circle kind of thing. Because we kind of like look back at one of the earlier conversations, like early on in the campaign, a conversation between Cather and Track, where, you know, Track compared, and he had this Track had this conversation multiple times with different people, of, you know, comparing them to somebody in a cage, right? And you know, like, because a part of the conversation is like trying to help bring light as to like the orcish understanding of freedom and whatnot, and what it actually means to live. And Cather being somebody who's in a cage and doesn't want to leave, despite having the ability to.
oh, that's so good.
And it is great, like kind of, because way back then it's like, no, why would I ever want to leave this cage? No, I don't.
Like,
I
this
don't
is
want
my
to.
purpose.
I don't deserve to. This is my existence. Versus now being like at the point, it's like, well, it's still, obviously Cather still has a very strong sense of duty and drive to succeed in defeating Clovar, if for the sake of that is the thing that he's been called to do, but he still wants to have a life after that, you know, which is huge growth for him. And it kind of does hark back to like, yeah, this idea of like the campaign has gone on for over 3 years now, which is remarkable. And it's remarkable that we're actually making it to the end.
Mm-hmm.
I would say at this point, the only regret, and I think this is maybe resonates with all of us, is just that like it could have been a cleaner ride, with
I mean,
with
yeah.
losing cast members, and just this, how things happen. Like obviously isn't how we initially wanted, but we're still doing pretty darn good for what we do have.
Yeah. And
We made it out.
and honestly, the fact that we like expected or had even the thought that like, yeah, we'll probably make it to the end like everything intact is kind of ludicrous. Like,
It is.
I mean, yeah.
Statistically.
like we are a group of people who have never done anything like this before.
Uh-huh.
We don't really know what we're doing.
Well, it was
ugh.
the thing is we were all drunk on main character energy, where we thought we would be the people who would beat the
Yeah,
odds
we're the ones who
with
do the thing.
with sheer willpower, which totally was achievable. And I think there are certainly things that could have been done that would have made things happen in a quote unquote better way. But the reality is that's not what happened at this point, and now it's just a matter of how well do we progress forward
Yep.
despite those
Do we
setbacks.
make the same mistakes that we did in the past? And hopefully the answer is no.
According to Amplify and Pod News, 44% of podcasts have less than 3 episodes, which is interesting. Only 720,000 podcasts have more than 10, which is really interesting. I don't know if that's on their platforms, but the point being is like, and for live streams and things,
I mean,
it's not
again,
very
you
often
look
that people are like a bunch of kids, like 19, 20, 21 at the time. A bunch of kids like, let's make a D&D podcast and we're going to be live on Twitch and it's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, yeah. I mean,
the chances of us actually being here 3 years later, through all of the crazy life things that have happened to all of us, we've all moved, we've all been to.
I did.
things
Speaking
like-
of that, I did have this thought the other day, and I chuckled to myself because of it. How when we first started this, first of all, we all had an understanding that there was potential for people to leave, come back, for it to kind of be a little bit wibbly wobbly. Obviously, we wanted everyone to be there as much as possible, but there's certainly potential for people to leave and not come back, or leave and then come back later, whatever, right? But all of us thought that it would be Grant who would leave first.
Well, yeah, because you were
I even thought that.
Because
Yeah,
he
I was
was-
going to an internship for a year.
because he was the person at the time with the most unknowns.
Yeah.
I was
like-
going to be in Taiwan.
Right.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
we started during COVID, so I had already. Yeah, I was going to be
Well,
going
yeah,
to
no, yeah,
Taiwan
'cause-
in like
yeah, 'cause-
November,
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
and then
'Cause-
that
'cause
changed.
we were trying to figure that out. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy to think about. Yeah, and so, yeah, here we are. And from the beginning, Aaron has mentioned this a number of times, but it's important. Like, from the beginning, our idea about the paper dungeon was that it needs to be a like stepping stone. Or like if there are people who have other aspirations, the paper dungeon at all times wants to be a support system to those things.
Yeah.
So like
Right.
it's never something that is like ill will to people who move on and do other things.
Yeah.
Or like won't be around, but it's just a like pleasant thing to do that could like go somewhere and also provide like lift people up that are on the cast. And
Yeah.
also just doing cool stuff for people to enjoy like at the end of the day.
And it's like it's
I got a potty, I'll be right back.
you live your dream. Like for what we've had and like the systems we had in place and like and the way we went about it, like I would even go as far to say as for the majority of things that we've done, we did them the best that we could with the like opportunities and resources that we had.
Yeah. I agree.
Like there are a few things here and there that like we really could have leaned into harder or put more focus on or stuff like that, but it's like sometimes bad things just happen, and that's just there's just nothing you can do about it. Now I have been talking to Ryan. I've talked with Ryan recently, and I have a couple of ideas for campaign 2. I think I want him to guest star as an NPC.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And he was
That'd be
like,
fun.
I mean, I'd be down to just pop on for a couple of episodes. So I don't know whether or not I want the NPC that I want him to play to be a group party member, not like a party member, but like a helpful NPC. Grant, to fill you in, I had talked with Ryan recently about potentially like guest starring
What a
in campaign
homie.
2.
What a guy, dude. Yes, absolutely.
But I don't know whether or
I
not
love
he
that.
should be like helpful to the party or a villain.
I think it would be awesome either way.
Like awesome either way. I think that he would do very well. Um, and so who knows? You may see Ryan. You may see other people that you've seen before.
Yep.
I
mean,
can't guarantee anything. But.
Personally, just putting it out there. So a little bit of insight into Drew. Obviously, at this point, it wouldn't happen for this campaign, but like I've had I a while ago I had talks with like Grant about like talking to Ryan and like Hannah even about like, hey, would you guys consider coming back at the end of the campaign just for a couple episodes, whatever, right? Now, I only ever had conversations with Grant, and that's obviously like a more group conversation kind of thing. And we kind of already that conversation has already kind of happened anyway.
Wouldn't it be crazy if like we're in the final battle and then like
and secretly
and Ryan joins the call and he's like, Havel descends from above with a dagger.
Or it's like,
I would love that.
Melora takes her bow
because that is so that is one thing with me is me being probably the person who's the most reminiscent of the group of the four of us of like I personally I mean this is kind of ironic because Aaron and I were ragging on the first episodes last week, like literally talking about how terrible they were, but I genuinely absolutely loved the first episodes that we played and like felt that there was a certain level of magic when all of us were there.
Yeah, I mean it was a different time and a different vibe. And
it was definitely a different vibe, that's for sure.
I'm not a big nostalgia person. It's for some things I'm a huge nostalgia person. But like in other things, like especially if it's an ongoing thing, it's really hard for me to look at something and then like look at what we're doing now and go like, it was better back then. And it's like hard for me to ever do that. Like I just couldn't. Yeah.
Well, and I don't think it was better back then. I think it was just as good, but in a different way. You know?
Yeah, it was a different show, basically.
Yeah, basically. Anyway, all that to say, Grant's disagreeing with me on this one. But all that to say, like, personally, like coming to the end of this story, like me, like it honestly, and it's still something. To be honest, it's still something I'm trying to process. But it was honestly kind of hurtful that we got to this point and we weren't still the full cast. You know, even though like even though originally we came to this idea with the idea that people could leave and come or whatever. I think for me it was just the nature of how certain people left that made it more hurtful of like feeling like the story wasn't all that it could have been, you know?
Yeah. Like we've certainly
and we had no
lines,
experience.
Yeah, there are certainly lines that like could have been better. Like without a doubt. Like it is the story that we've told isn't perfect. Now, to be fair, if they had stayed, like it still wouldn't have been perfect. Like there are things that we messed up and could have done.
Yeah. I think for me it's more so the notion of like regardless of whether or not it technically would have turned out better or worse, whether they stayed or left or whatever, it was for me it's the notion that all of us wanted to do this story together, all seven of us, right, when we first started. And so then when you get to the end of it and not everyone made it to the other side, so to speak, that, you know, it kind of sucks.
It's like in being in war. And you finish the battle and you're like, half of my platoon is gone.
Yeah.
Empty chairs at empty table.
And I think specifically with like Hannah and Ryan, like it was kind of rough just because how they left and how their characters kind of had to leave was very
sudden and jarring.
It was very abrupt and unfortunately it was necessary. But it wasn't very good for the story and just for it feeling natural and kind of like an actual nice bookend, you know.
Here's what I gotta say, because I have a feeling people might try to read between the lines. We're chill.
Oh yeah,
everything's chill.
Nothing against anyone who left
negative
TBD.
Feelings, and we're like, oh, they shouldn't have left.
You can check Grant's Twitter. Hannah responded to his idiot August post.
Did you really?
Yeah,
dude. Yeah, and so you know,
we're
the thing is, we're inexperienced. We're young. Here's how I think too. Like Drew, you're so sweet. You have such a sweet little heart.
I
and you
know,
just
I'm
wanna-
I'm a
like,
sweetheart.
You're such a family guy, and literally we've had this
I'm a
conversation.
community guy. Yeah.
How I feel about it too, with like the cast changing and whatnot. Even on professional casts, Critical Role, the cast is changing a lot, and we've been
Not
doing
so much
this
of
for
a critical role, but
well,
No,
okay,
no, they
whatever.
lost the guy
Well,
early on.
It has
they-
happened.
yeah. The reason I say less so a critical role is like they lost. They have over their past 10 years of critical roleness, they've lost a person.
Okay,
Well, yeah.
they're
but they're
professionals. I
also
guess.
grown adults that have
Yeah,
been
yeah.
in
But
the
for them,
business and
yeah.
known each other
But
for like
the
20
difference for
years.
them is the difference for them is they're all like adults with stable jobs and lives and have been playing
here's
together
the
for
thing,
the
Drew.
past
You're
like
thinking about
10
it
years
all
before
wrong.
that.
Even with all of those things going for
Exactly.
them, they still lost a person.
So we're idiot kids with no experience.
We've got none of the benefits
with dreams.
that they have.
There you go.
You know,
Yeah,
like
there you go.
in
All
my
true.
opinion, the fact that there is still 4 of us is a miracle. The fact that this thing is still walking, is a miracle to me. And I'm very pleased that we can still have that much stuff with the original cast and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we I don't know. It's pretty cool. We're excited to bring people on, and like I think a part of the pain or the like nostalgia-y feeling is the
bittersweet.
fact the same thing that people get with channels like that they have watched for a long time, where it's going to naturally change.
Yeah.
And like
This isn't
and that's
like
something
what I used to watch.
it's not what it used to be, and I think that's really where a
I
lot
don't
of
wanna
that feeling
play
comes
this
from.
toy anymore.
I miss the old
Yeah.
Kanye.
Yeah, before he got like crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyways, that's an interesting tangent that we went on.
We're like almost 3 hours deep into this. Do we have
I know.
anything else that we want to talk
I do
about?
have
God
another thing.
dang
actually.
it, Grant. I've got a life
I just
to
have
live.
to mention, it's gonna be really short.
It's almost 7 o'clock.
I've got it's 6:20.
That's almost 7 o'clock, Grant. By the time we're done,
It's
with
gonna
this.
be really quick,
Oh
and we're
my
not gonna
God,
we're not gonna go in
backwards.
tangents. Look,
At
Edward
one point, we were going to talk about like the break and stuff, and like what we're going to do after the campaign ends. But
that can wait. Look, Edward talked to his mama, and I have to mention this because to Grant, although the scene itself might seem a little insignificant or like I don't know, short or whatever, to me, Grant, as to Edward, that scene meant so much to me because here's why. Edward, for the first time, first of all, name drop. That was awesome. Edward Nibley Fellows. Second of all, Edward is now claiming his actual given name. Like, he would, at the beginning, like, flaunt it, right? I'm the Fellows. But then he, like, he learned about his father and that he wasn't great. And then, like, his name meant something different to him. And he's never been who he was. Like, he's never accepted himself in that manner. He had neglected the estate and he hadn't finished it, which is a representation of the fact that he hasn't been able to reckon with his feelings about his father and his old life, like in his old self. He can't reckon with that. And so for him to go back and say, I want to be there. I want to go back to that place. I want to fix it, and I want to live there, and I want to own my own name, Edward Nibley Fellows, because Newgate has forfeited my inheritance. He's forfeited his right to it, and now I am inheriting, and I'm going to use it. Like to Edward, and it's a cool contrast because earlier, it's like, or I guess a parallel, because earlier he claimed his Orcish name. And he said, yes, I am Edward Lul Kulkadar, which in my head is his Fate's Gambit persona. And then later, he owns his Edward Nibley Fellows name, which in my head is his normal person persona.
Uh-huh.
And so to me, in that moment, it was like Edward like accepting and like owning his identity in both cases, which is just beautiful to me. I love it so much. I just love it. So I just had to mention that.
Oh yeah, I mean, and it is significant for Edward too, since so much of the journey, like Edward has been split between the party and between like a normal life in the city, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so for Edward to accept both parts of that aspect of himself, of his life fully, it is significant. You know, it
And
is a really cool moment.
one of my favorite things that Edward ever said was, "Why do I have to save the world when I want to be a part of it?" And I'm like, it's like it's exactly what Edward is. I just love it. Thank you.
Are we good?
Yeah, that's it.
All right. Drew, do you have any other topics that you would like to cover?
You know, Aaron, I think that I would like to discuss.
Thanks for your input. Thank you
Oh
everyone
no,
for
he's
stopping
muted.
by.
Aaron, I was gonna segue into you. I was gonna discuss the end of this stream.
I thought it would be funny if I just didn't let you though.
But no, you're just gonna cut me off like
It was pretty hilarious. I'm
cut
not
off
gonna lie.
rants.
Hi, I'm Aaron, comedic genius. Thank you for your segue, Drew. I don't have anything more to talk about either. But if you want more conversation about like what we do, how we do it behind the scenes, talking about the story, about the campaign, what happens next, where we're going, this is probably where we're going to notify people, or at least talk about if we're just shutting down. If it's like, well, this is the end.
Zero Dark Alpha or something.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be crazy.
That would be. This is the place to find it. So if you have any more interest in TTRPGs, in the Paper Dungeon and Dungeons and Dragons, this is where you'll find it. So so we stream mostly every Thursday. That might change in the future. Check us out on Mondays for the actual story. I don't want to repeat our plugs because they're in the chat. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone for stopping by today. Thank you, Drew, for being consistent. Thank you, Grant, for fulfilling double the amount of required appearances that you needed.
Thank you, everybody.
The only thing that I have left to say to anyone who hears this is good luck and Godspeed, Dungeoneers. We will see you next time. Goodbye. Goodbye.